Hey everybody, welcome to the Sunday Show. We are live. It's July 12th, 2026. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me, Promise, how are you?
Hello. I'm doing well, especially now that I'm back. I feel like I've been gone for so long, but I'm happy to be here and happy to be hosting with you.
You got a flower in your hair and everything.
I'm feeling very summery. I live in Finland where it's usually not very hot, but it is pretty warm today and there's no air conditioning. So if I start melting halfway through the show, everybody, it's fine. That's what's happening. And I had to close the window for sound's sake. So the glisten will happen at a certain point.
I'm going to let Arden know that everybody in chat is saying there's a massive, terrible echo, and I'm sure she'll get on fixing it.
Oh,
In the
exciting.
meantime, we'll leave some space. And we'll say welcome to the continuing year of Zen on my part. I am going to drop part of the conceit, and that is normally it's I know only language and logic, and I don't know anything about your religion. I'm not going to pretend that I don't know anything about your religion, but I am going to ask a lot more questions. The echo is fixed. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, chat. I'm not going to pretend that I don't know anything about your religion, but I am going to ask more questions and give people more kind of leeway to explain things because their view of their religion may be different or unique. Not very unique because something can't be very unique or more unique. Unique is unique is unique. But from time to time, if the producer thinks that I have in fact crossed a line or lost it, because I'm not gonna, I can't help whether or not I get frustrated, but I can help what I do about it. So I don't have to yell at anybody. I will use profanity whenever the heck I want, or not whenever I don't want. But yeah, so basically we want to give people space to try to convince us. And we're wondering if there are people out there who can explain what they believe and why in a way that is understandable to virtually anybody. Can you explain why others should share your belief? And a lot of this is going to boil down to just kind of telling us what you believe, answering a couple of clarifying questions. Don't start in with okay, 23 things.
No script, no preamble, please.
Yeah, it's going to be, you need to explain what it is that you believe so that we can understand it, answer some clarifying questions so that we can kind of understand it a little better, and then explain why you think we should share that belief. We are going to interrupt. It's not an attempt to be rude or to dog stomp, but there's a bunch of people on hold. There's technical delay in the calls, and we can't always hear everything, or we may not be speaking the same way about the same subject. And so if there's a massive like misinformation that we need to correct, like you're like, well, under the atheist model, you can't have any such moral position, blah, blah, blah. We can correct that. This isn't a race. We're going to be here for several hours. And you will get to speak more, I guarantee you, if you chop it up into manageable, convenient doses and interact and have a good back and forth with us. If your justification for believing requires some very lengthy story or a lecture, that's probably not going to be conducive to a good show, but we'll if you can get it down succinct, we're still interested. And if your view requires a whole bunch of specialized knowledge and jargon, you might not be ready. Like, you could phrase justifications for anything. You could give an entire lecture on, let's say, epistemology, and go through an entire philosophy course and use all of the included jargon. And then when somebody says, "Ooh, I don't understand that," you can be like, "Oh, well, then you're not ready for the conversation. You haven't read so much." Yes, you can do that type of thing, but I don't think, for the most part, it's going to do you any good. I was, by the way, a Southern Baptist fundamentalist Christian. I even have a Jesus hat I can put on if we really needed
It's
to.
incredible.
But uh, if you can't explain it in a way that's approachable to almost anybody, I'm not convinced you understand it, but I also don't necessarily know what benefit there can be. And nothing about your personal justification for believing in a God or whatever your view is has anything to do on what Promise and I already believe, what we used to believe, what would convince us. None of it. I mean, if we just said nothing could ever convince us, that shouldn't change what your reason is and whether or not you are able to present it to maybe reach more reasonable minds than ours. Promise also coming from a religious background. Her book, Gospel of Lies, is available right now. I just happen to have it here right on my desk. Now that we've done all the intro stuff and we got people queuing up on the phone, how are you feeling? Are you ready to get in and answer questions
I'm
and see if we can learn about God or somebody?
I'm very excited. I'm eager to talk to theists. I've kind of had a break. I was on like a little road trip around a lake here in Finland. I actually went to the what's it called? The border of Finland and Russia, which was crazy to see in person. But during that time, I was being so zen and so present that I was not engaging at all. And so now I feel a little rusty. I feel extra patient and willing to listen to somebody talk for quite a bit if they're answering our questions. So, you know, I think there's a chance we'll have some good conversations today if the theists are willing to call in. I've noticed them a lot in chat. I've noticed them a lot in my comment section, in your comment section. I'm curious as to why they want to talk through text, but they don't want to actually call in and have a real conversation. That's interesting.
It's funny because I'm looking at chat and somebody said Matt's giving Groucho Marx vibes today. And then somebody said, did Promise dye her hair or is it just the light? And for those that were asking, yes, in fact, I did dye my beard. I dyed it two different times. And the first time nobody noticed. We were doing a little testing thing. And this time it came out significantly darker and goofy looking. And I'm not, the more I have it, the less I like it. I'm just gonna let it naturally go back to the wise gray.
Yeah, I think the gray really suits you, actually. No, I guess I have maybe colored my hair since I was on here. Thanks for noticing, because I even forgot. I got a little bit of the blonde. If you guys were around for the original Eve Was Framed, I used to have like my hair dyed jet black and I had this white streak right here. So I feel like we're getting like a softer version of the original Eve Was Framed. Also, fun fact, Jimmy told me not to get rid of that hair. He said that is what was going to help like keep my my recognition stuff, which was very true for a while. And then there was a moment where after I dyed it, well, my hair was like falling out, so I had to dye it. And I was like, oh my gosh, nobody's gonna watch my TikToks because they're not gonna know it's me. So they're just
Mm.
gonna scroll past because they've been used to this. And there was an overlap where Jimmy was right. I had to tell everybody, like, no, it's me. It's me, the girl with the weird hair. I just have normal hair now.
Well,
Anyways,
I know we've been expecting to hear news of Mitch McConnell's demise, but instead I woke up in the middle of the night to news that Lindsey Graham has died, and I posted about it. Um, Somebody said that, oh, you shouldn't speak ill of the dead. And somebody else said that warning to not speak ill of the dead is really ridiculous and stupid. And I pointed out that when I say terrible things about Lindsey Graham, I'm not speaking ill of the dead. I'm talking about that piece of shit while he was alive. And he hasn't done anything bad since he died, as far as I can tell. So I have no complaints about him since he is no longer with us. But
Ugh. One of the sad things about being on such a different time zone is that I hear about this stuff and then I have to wait for you guys to wake up. So I have someone to talk to about it because I knew about Lindsey Graham and I was like, oh my God, everybody wake up. I'm like the only one sitting there reading the news and have no Americans to chat with about it. So
Well, I woke up. I had some stomach stuff last night, and I ended up waking up around, I don't know, 4:30 or so, and heard the news and shared it right away. I did end up going back to sleep, but we've got callers, and we do not have
Nice.
theist callers yet, but we have atheist callers, and we can maybe answer some questions or get into a massive argument. Who knows? Maybe an atheist can bust my Zen. By the way, the Zen thing is not a challenge for you guys. It's not like you guys need to call in and be like, "Oh, I can
Try
chill
to
bro
piss
this
you
dude
off.
into losing his shit." Because you probably could if you really, really tried hard enough. Genuinely, we're just trying to make sure that I don't wind up. Well, I'm trying to prove a lesson to the people who are like, Matt can't control himself. Yes, I can. I just choose not to. And then we're going to see over the course of a year whether things improve or not. Because I think not just us. I mean, the people here at the line, the people I'm fortunate enough to work with, are some of the best people doing this anywhere in the world. Some of the smartest and best intentioned. Um, and I will say that last thing before we get to calls, I'm going to NanoCon at the end of this month, just a couple of weeks away, and I'm putting together an entire magic show. And I'm a little nervous because A, I've got to drive and I've still got to prep and I've got to do music prep and audio stuff and props and packing things and doing all this. And I'm driving out there on my own. And I am absolutely terrified that I will somehow screw this up. But I've done NanoCon several times, and they've never had to apologize for me missing the thing that they paid me to do. Um, so, on that note, I will continue my trend. You ready for some calls?
Yeah, meanwhile, there's me who is having to do it virtually now because I won't be
Oh, no,
there,
no, that
unfortunately.
wasn't a spike
But
at
I
you.
did give
You're
a
doing
heads
it
up.
virtually. I was talking about people they actually did. Never mind.
I figured. I figured.
All right, here we go. So Ray is calling in. Ray's an atheist pronunciation from Arizona. Hey, Ray, you're on with Promise and Matt. How are you?
Hi. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Ray, what were you calling
Uh-oh.
in for today?
Okay. I was calling in because it seems like you're often focused on evidence when people call in, and it seems to me that focusing on evidence for people who don't already believe because of evidence is harmful for that individual, because then they're going to have a faulty reason for why they think they believe something, and they're going to go down the wrong path trying to deconstruct that. And then they um, if they find out there isn't any evidence, they have the choice between trying to figure out why they do believe, or just saying evidence isn't a good way to um, know things, and you start getting like science denier sort of things.
I'm a little confused. I'm trying to follow what you're saying, and I wonder if the best way to understand what your point is how would what do you think is the right way to do it?
Oh, so like um, like when you ask people why they believe something, like some people will say, I just people who believe in Jesus just seem happier. Um, and in that example, you'd want to break down if people seeming happier is a good reason, and if there's another reason. Like I grew up, and they had like this song for children of, it's like if you chance to meet a smile, turn it upside down. Sorry. If you chance to meet a frown, turn it upside down. And so examining whether those people are happy because they're actually happy, are acting happy because they're actually happy, or acting happy because they believe that they should pretend to be happy and aren't actually happy to begin with. That
I'm a
Well,
little
their
confused.
I've
social situation.
yeah, I've had I've had those exact conversations with people where we do act like we say, is that a good reason to believe something? When we have somebody call in on the show, we're asking if there's a reason why we should believe what they believe. For all of us, it's going to maybe be slightly different, but we're still looking for a good reason to believe, and that's what all the conversations are. I'm curious if this is a like you don't like our tone, or like I still don't think I understand
I
what
also
you're
don't know how it's
exactly stressing.
possibly
Especially
harmful to
previously
ask
with Matt
people
before
if
then.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm also wondering how it could possibly be harmful to ask someone if they have evidence to support their position.
not necessarily just asking them if they have evidence, but trying to drill down and say that they have to have evidence.
I'm sorry, do you think it's a good idea to hold positions without evidence to support them?
I don't, but I think that a lot of people don't actually recognize that they don't have evidence for something they believe in.
think so basically what you're describing is that you arrogantly think it's a bad idea to believe things without evidence, but you have a problem with teaching other people why it might be a problem to believe things without evidence?
I don't know why you're saying arrogantly.
Because you
That,
seem to think that one thing is right, but other people won't get that. They don't understand that. They need to not be uh, called out for not having evidence.
what I'm saying is it's just less effective than
How do you know
trying to
what's
figure out why
effective?
they actually believe.
No. I've literally spent decades asking people why they believe. And I don't say, hey, caller. Matter of fact,
And
I don't think you heard the word. I'm sorry, I'm still talking, Ray. I don't think
sorry.
you heard the word evidence in my discussion about what they should be calling in for. As a matter of fact, I've pointed out to people, if you don't believe for evidence or you don't think evidence is important, we're still interested in why you believe and why you think we should believe. And if somebody called in and said, I believe because I'm convinced it makes people happier, and I think you should believe because it makes people happier, then we have a conversation about, does it actually make people happier? And is that a good enough reason to believe it? Because I'm still talking, Ray. And is that a good enough reason to believe it? Because my primary concern is it true? I genuinely do not care if somebody's religion makes them happier or makes somebody else happier. My focus is on whether or not it's true. And so eventually we drill down to, okay, what evidence can you provide for this? And you seem to be suggesting that asking them for evidence is somehow well, you literally use the word harmful. And I don't get it.
Oh, sorry. I'm still thinking. So, what was I saying? It's not asking people for evidence itself that's harmful. It's ignoring when they say that they have a different reason, and just trying to go straight to, is there evidence?
When does that happen? I reject your fiction, but you also mentioned about what was more effective. What method do you have that's more effective? I'm still talking. What method do you have that's more effective, and how do you know it's more effective?
So I don't necessarily know it's more effective.
Then shut up.
Okay. I mean, I'm just trying to help you out here, and you seem to be saying that.
How are you trying to help me out? Do you here, Ray? Ray, do you have evidence to support your belief that you have a better way?
I mean, I'm not someone who just.
Do you have evidence to support your belief that you have a better way?
So this is what I'm talking about.
Ray, do you have evidence to support your belief that you have a better way? Why can't you answer a simple question?
That's a problem.
Why can't you answer a simple question? Do you have, Ray, are you trying to break my zen, Ray? Was that your fucking goal? Do you have evidence?
I'm really not, but I called in
okay,
when you
if
weren't
you're really
on
not, then answer my question, you hypocrite. Do you have evidence that you have a better way?
I don't think you have evidence that your way
I didn't ask you
either.
what you think
people
about
call
whether or
back-
not I have evidence, Ray. I asked you if you had evidence that you had a better way, but you're so dishonest that you won't even give me a yes or no answer to that.
I don't have evidence, but I don't think you
Okay,
have evidence.
so if
that
you don't
your
have
way is
evidence,
better
Ray,
either.
Ray, listen,
I don't feel like
I'm
it's
going to mute you. I
productive to
swear,
talk about
Ray.
evidence.
Ray, you said that it was a bad idea to believe things without evidence, and you're here trying to tell me that you have a better way of doing it and acknowledge that you don't have evidence. How does that not make you a big fucking hypocrite?
Sorry, I think you.
I'm sorry. The question was, how does that not make you a big fucking hypocrite?
I think you got something about what I was saying wrong.
I'm sorry.
I'm
The
not
question
saying that you
was,
should
how does
believe
that
things
not
without
make you a
evidence.
big fucking hypocrite?
It doesn't make me a hypocrite because you've got.
It
what
does
I
make you a
think
hypocrite.
initially
If
wrong.
you say that it's a bad idea to believe things without evidence, and you're in here trying to tell me that I'm wrong and you're right, and admit that you don't have evidence, then you're a hypocrite.
Can I
Because
add something in
you
here?
believe something that you don't have evidence for.
Yeah.
Can I say something real quick? So, Ray, I think another thing that happens is a lot of people listen to this show and they think that, I don't know what you think, but they think that we are trying to specifically, maybe change the mind of the person that we're talking to or help that person. I don't think that I'm good at that sort of thing. If I did, I would volunteer my time over with Recovering from Religion and volunteer on their hotlines where I'm having private one-on-one conversations with people. The point of these conversations is for other people to hear so that they can learn. Not even necessarily how to have these conversations, although I think that is a side effect. I know it was for me when I first started listening to these kinds of casual call-in debate shows. But it's also for them to hear how to critically think. So when somebody does say, well, I just think it makes you happier, and then we do what you said, I'm not sure I've literally done that in multiple of the episodes where I say, okay, is feeling happy a good reason to believe something? And we'll hold their hand and walk them through that. But at a certain point, most of the callers don't want to concede that they don't have evidence. They continue saying, no, that is evidence. And it is our job as the hosts on here to point out that that's factually incorrect.
Because that's unproductive,
the goal
trying to just go down on evidence.
Right. And so the goal of what we're doing is not necessarily to help the person. In fact, for me, it's almost never the goal to help the person I'm talking to. If that ends up happening, that's amazing. But I'm mostly just trying to have an honest conversation. And whether that helps that person or it helps the audience, I don't know. The other thing, though, that's happening here is to me, it comes off that you've called the show to tell us how to do our jobs. I don't think I'm doing this the right way. I think I'm doing it the way that I know how to do it. I'm doing my best. I change and grow, I hope, all the time. I definitely change. And I'm always trying to learn more. However, it's really awkward to hear people who have never done this call in, because what I would prefer that you do is go do it better. I would love the more people doing this, and especially if they're going to end up being better at it than us, that is a win. That is a really great thing. So if all I did was motivate you to go do a better job, that's already great. I think we're all doing our best and we're trying to have these conversations. But we do hear that it's successful, or else I, for one, would not be doing this if I didn't hear from countless people how helpful these conversations are.
So the main problem is the way you're doing it here is a way that isn't necessarily based on your interaction with that person specifically, and more based off of trying to get something that's good for the audience. But then the problem with that is
Ray,
that
that's a lie.
try and do that same.
Ray, that's a lie. I don't need you to suggest that. I don't need you to suggest that what we're doing here is just for the audience and the clicks and stuff like that. And that, no, when Promise is saying that she's not necessarily trying to help the person on the phone, I'm not necessarily trying to convince the person on the phone, only because I have strong evidence that once somebody's made a public profession of an idea, that they're less likely to change their mind. But there are people out there listening who believe for the exact same reasons. And when the caller fails to demonstrate things, or when the caller falters in the face of offering evidence to the contrary, it can help the other people. Just like there's people out there just like you right now who have been sitting there thinking, gosh, I think there's a better way of doing it, but they're all too, I don't know, whatever excuse they can come up with to not go out and do it or do it better. And then they want to say, oh, I think I have a better way. And then they want to call in and tell us all we have a better way. And then I ask them to provide the evidence for that. And when they
I
fail to
do
do
go
it,
out
I
and do
help
that. I
other
don't have an
people who are
on.
I'm sorry, I'm still talking, Ray. I help other people out there who smugly think that they know things that they don't know, to realize that maybe they don't know.
So when you talked about if I have any evidence for this, I was wrong when I said I didn't. I've talked to my family specifically, the same sort of way, and just trying to talk about whether or not there's evidence isn't
Hey,
productive
Ray,
with talking with them.
Ray, define small sample size.
So I don't know why you would expect me to have a larger sample size.
Because I have a larger sample size, and you suggesting that you have evidence because you spoke to your family is one of the dumbest things I've heard.
Also, I just want to point out, I would never have the conversation with my family the way that I have it with a stranger on a phone call, where
Sure.
we have like
That's
guidelines
what I'm
and
saying.
time frame and all of that. But you're trying to tell us to do it in a way that we would do with a family member when this is not what the show is at all. It wouldn't work. Like, it wouldn't work. It would defeat the purpose of the show. We would spend like 7 hours every day trying to like have a kind, nuanced, and we'd have to get to know the person so that there's that whole dynamic. I'm even more confused now than
So
at the
then you
very
need to look
beginning of
at whether or not what you're doing is moral, because you're doing something harmful for one person that
What's
is
the harm
beneficial
that
for
we're
a
doing?
group of people.
Ray,
Tell me
prove the
what
harm
the
right
harm
now,
is.
or I will hang up on you in the quickest fucking way. What is the harm?
I mean, that's what Elon Musk said when he stopped Doge. He said,
Okay, I'm going to mute you because people in chat think that you're actually being honest. And when I tell you to demonstrate the harm, if you cite Elon Musk, you're monumentally full of shit. Ray, go do your own show. Go show us how you can do it better. Go be a better person. I don't need your moralizing. I don't need your lecturing. I don't need your fictional pretend offense that maybe it's unfair or harmful to ask people for evidence. I actually have theists on hold, and I don't care if they're the worst, dumbest, poorest arguing theist I've ever heard. It will still be better than me spending another second listening to Ray, who's never done a thing and only has the information from his family, trying to tell us that, ooh, you guys are doing it wrong and you're being immoral. Fuck off, Ray. Cool. You ready to do a show?
Let's do it. I feel like that was
Cool.
a troll. Maybe not, but it feels
Well,
like that was
Marcus
too
is
weird.
calling from, wow, are you calling from New Zealand? Yeah. Hey, Marcus, says the supernatural was confirmed by doctors in the 21st century. How
20th
couldn't,
century. I think
sorry, what?
the call this 20th century. I think the
20th
screener got
century.
it wrong.
How could doctors confirm the supernatural? Because I don't know of any way the supernatural could ever be confirmed.
Well, hi again. Hi again. I'm the same color from other time. I don't know if you remember me.
Nope. How can we confirm the
let's hear-
supernatural?
Well, first there was this prophet Ellen White. She got visions, lots of visions from
That's what she
supposedly
says.
from God. Yes, supposedly
Yeah.
from God. And during these visions,
You're talking about Ellen White, right?
Yeah. Her husband would let doctors examine her.
Yeah.
And none of these doctors knew what was happening to her during those moments.
So if doctors don't know, how is that a case of doctors proving the supernatural?
one of the doctors even say, I cannot account for this condition. It must be supernatural.
Oh, okay. Marcos, do you understand what logical fallacies are?
Some of them, yeah.
Okay. So if somebody says, I can't think of a better, like, let's say we find a dead body and somebody says, I think ghosts killed this person, and the investigators come in and they're unable to find any justification to accuse any living human being, is it reasonable for them to then conclude that it was ghosts that did this?
I mean, if there is evidence for it, like ectoplasm, and if the person,
You're joking, right? There's no such thing as ectoplasm. This is old spiritualist nonsense. It's been debunked. But from a logical fallacy standpoint, the mere fact that somebody can't come up with a scientific explanation is not justification that the actual explanation is supernatural. How can you test and confirm that the supernatural is possible, likely, and should be considered a candidate explanation for anything, including Ellen G. White's professed supposed visions that we can't investigate or confirm?
Well, it's philosophically difficult to prove that the supernatural happened, because
that's not what I asked.
Even if you prove it.
I didn't ask you whether it was difficult. I asked, how can you do it? Because you're calling in, and the screener note here specifically says you think the supernatural was confirmed by doctors. And I'm asking you, how can anyone confirm it? And all you've done so far is say it's difficult. Okay. Is it impossible, or is it possible to confirm?
For me, at least, it's possible.
Okay, that's not the way reality works. See, something can't be possible to prove for you and not to the rest of us. That's not how an external reality works.
It's just that I am open to supernatural explanations for things.
Okay, but whether or not you're open for it doesn't tell us whether or not they're possible or whether or not they're true. I'm open to supernatural things as well, just as soon as someone demonstrates how I can tell when something's supernatural or not.
Right. So a person not breathing for 2 hours would not be considered supernatural?
A purple what?
A person not breathing for 2 hours and continue to be alive, and even standing.
So I'm not convinced that that's ever happened, but if it did happen, at most we would be able to say we have no explanation for that. We would not be able to conclude that it was necessarily supernatural, because maybe there's a natural explanation that we just don't have any way to investigate. The time to believe something is after there's evidence for it. But you're saying that somebody didn't breathe for 2 hours and was alive for that entire time, and I don't believe that happened. What evidence do you have that it happened?
Like I said, I have the words of doctors that tried to investigate any way that she was breathing during those visions. I couldn't find anything. They tested her. They did all sorts of tests on her. They investigated her. And they even put a candle during her mouth when she talked, and closest to possible.
What year were you born?
Any breathing.
What year were you born?
I was born in 2004. I don't know what that's relevant.
It's relevant because Ellen G. White died in 1915. So yes. You didn't see this. You have no way of investigating it. And you've never met anybody who had any way of investigating it. So you're going off reports. But the reports aren't what you say they are. It's not like, so for example, I'm a magician, and magicians have ways of fooling people into thinking that they can do supernatural things. Famously, the amazing Randy sent some folks around um, to try to fool scientists. And people do it all the time. And they eventually get busted because somebody figures out how the trick is done. How did you determine, first of all, that she in fact appeared to not be breathing for 2 hours? Then how did you determine that she was in fact not breathing versus some sort of trickery or confusion?
Well, like I said, there's the word of doctors, and these doctors knew of every disease, and they haven't diagnosed her with anything. And
I'm
as
sorry,
for
did you say
trickery,
that you're trusting doctors who knew every disease but didn't diagnose her with anything?
yeah, we have the name of the doctors.
Okay. Um, I have the names of a bunch of people that I don't believe, but also doctors aren't experts in fooling people. And it wouldn't matter if they knew every disease, which I don't think there's a doctor on the planet that knows every disease, but it wouldn't matter if they did, whether or not they were able to diagnose her with something or determine what was going on is separate from concluding what was going on.
Well, there is no evidence for trickery or forgery, if
How do you
that's
know that?
what you're asking.
So you, because you're not aware of evidence for trickery, doesn't mean that there wasn't trickery, right?
Not exactly, but I'm open. I'm open to somebody deeply investigating this and finding some evidence of trickery in those
How can
authorities because
somebody
I
go
don't
back?
know.
Nobody can go back in time and reobserve these things. We can only go on the reports that were there. And if somebody failed to gather evidence of trickery, that doesn't mean that there wasn't trickery. Why on earth would you reach the conclusion that these stories from a century ago, more than a century ago, are not only true, but that the best explanation for them is the supernatural?
Well, for one, I haven't seen this level of confirmation for anything and any any supposedly supernatural event. And having seen anyone other than her supposedly fool people so much, specialists even, that they're doing this with no one is able to confident that saw her in visions
You
confidently
should
able to
look
say
up,
this is trickery.
you should stop. You should look up Harry Houdini, who used to expose spirit mediums on the regular. And, Houdini, by the way, great escape artist. And when he would escape from ropes and things, the ropes would still be tied. And so Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of Sherlock Holmes, engaged in what I like to call the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle fallacy. He concluded that because the ropes were still tied, that the best explanation was that Houdini had the power to physically dematerialize and melt through the ropes. Do you think that was a good conclusion?
Uh, if he could find no other explanation, why wouldn't he believe it?
Because that's irrational. The mere fact that you can't think of another explanation doesn't mean the only explanation you can come up with is rational. This is the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle fallacy. See, I'm not impressed with Conan Doyle because he wrote Sherlock Holmes and put the words into Sherlock Holmes' mouth that said, when you've eliminated all other possibilities, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the right answer. The problem is that's really easy to do when you're writing a detective story and you control all of the actual facts. So you can give your protagonist, you can give Holmes all of the available information in a brilliant mind such that he's ruled out everything. In reality, you cannot rule out everything. His premise, when you've ruled out all other explanations, whatever remains, you don't know what remains. You're picking something from that you don't even know remains. So, like, for example, we can't figure out how Houdini escaped from these ropes. What explanation remains? Well, the explanation that he could dematerialize isn't even necessarily an explanation that remains, because there's no demonstration that that is even possible. So you don't get to consider it a candidate explanation. And considering that Doyle was friends with Houdini until Houdini exposed Doyle's wife as a fraudulent spirit medium as well, he was there and saw it all in person. And Houdini knew that Doyle was reaching these conclusions, and Houdini absolutely could not dematerialize. We know how he did his tricks. The fact that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle didn't is the problem. And the fact that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was so in love with how smart he thought he was, that he thought he had eliminated all other possibilities. I can do rope escapes. Well, first of all, Houdini didn't do it for speed, so it's pointless for me to say I do it faster, even though I do say that in my act, because I do. But I don't have to dematerialize. And if I fooled you, that would not mean it was rational for you to think that I could dematerialize.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this, but wouldn't that lead you to being a cynic? Because anything, it cannot possibly be supernatural, even though I have no other natural explanation or evidence for fraud. It's a very cynical way of thinking, I guess. I cannot adopt this worldview.
Can't adopt what worldview? The rational one?
Well, you say it's rational, but I don't know what other explanations there could be. So I must assume it's a fraud then. That, like, she somehow was a super magician and knew how to fool all these doctors into
Or
thinking
maybe it
she
didn't
did not breathe
happen.
for 2 hours.
Maybe it didn't happen.
Well, like I said, you have the name of the doctor. Somebody actually investigated this deeply.
You have the names of people who've been dead for decades, if not a century. You can't investigate. What good does their name do? You have my name. If I tell you that I know how Houdini escaped from ropes, does that mean I know?
Well, you have to say it and demonstrate it.
Well, you're not requiring them to demonstrate it. All you're requiring is their name.
And testimonies from other people from
Are you a Christian, Marcos?
People.
Are you a Christian?
It's complicated. It's complicated.
Okay.
I would say I'm a misotheistic
Are you a Mormon?
Christian.
Are you a Mormon?
No.
Why don't you believe the testimony of Joseph Smith?
I heard this one before. Even if I could believe it, why could it be demonic? Because Joseph Smith maybe had received these plates from an angel, but why couldn't it be demonic?
Why couldn't her thing have been demonic? Why does any of it demonic? Why would you assume that demonic is a viable explanation, and that it's preferable to lying or confusion?
Because in my worldview, if you haven't anything that proves that it's natural, even though it should be easy to prove that it's natural, then the supernatural, is open.
Yeah, your worldview is irrational and isn't based on evidence.
So I should just adopt a Humean worldview from David Hume that the supernatural is just completely off the table,
No,
even though there's no evidence of fraud.
no, and that's not Hume's worldview either. As a humist myself, what I can point you to is that Hume's view is that we shouldn't believe something until we have evidence for it. Hume, as with modern science, doesn't say that the supernatural cannot exist. It's that the time to believe that it exists is after it's been demonstrated, and that it is fallacious to say that because I don't currently have a natural explanation, therefore there must be a supernatural explanation. You should adopt a view of skepticism, which is that you should be convinced of whatever is actually supported by evidence, and until such time as it is, you should not believe it.
Okay, but okay, so let's say that there's this girl, Ellen White, that had these supposedly supernatural visions. How would she convince you that she had supernatural visions? Because if the words of doctors, yeah, no, she's dead. She can't do it now. But let's say you lived in the same time as her.
I don't know.
How would you?
I don't know, because I don't have a goal of someone proving that it's supernatural. First of all, she would need to prove. So, for example, the James Randi Educational Foundation, for the people who think that I'm way more obsessed with magic than they are, congratulations, you get more of it. James Randi Educational Foundation is something that was started by the amazing Randi, a magician. It was sponsored by in part, Johnny Carson from The Tonight Show and others, when it was just a $10,000 prize, but it became $1 million prize. And for years, anyone who thought that they could produce any supernatural or paranormal effect could apply for the $1 million prize. And what would happen is they would apply and they would say what they could do, and they would work together with a team of people to develop a test protocol that would demonstrate to everyone's satisfaction that they were able to do the thing that they said they could do. Randi wasn't involved in this. It was handled outside of there. He was basically the supervisor, kind of curating the $1 million prize, wasn't involved in the actual testing. However, he always got blamed, or frequently got blamed, for having supernatural powers himself that would thwart their powers. But they would agree on a test protocol, and then they would test them. And if they passed the preliminary test, there would be a second test to confirm with tweaks that they could do what they said they'd do. And nobody ever had to demonstrate that it was in fact paranormal or supernatural, just that they were able to do the thing. And if they did, they would win $1 million. Nobody ever passed the preliminary test. Nobody was ever able to demonstrate that they could do what they said they could do, whether it was remote viewing, dowsing, speaking with the dead, none of those things. Nobody was ever able to demonstrate it to pass the preliminary test. We would need to pass the preliminary test, then pass an actual test. And then what we would have is, this is something people can definitely do, but we don't know why. We don't know if the cause is supernatural or not. I don't know, from an epistemological standpoint, how you could possibly demonstrate that the supernatural is real to include it as a candidate explanation. But that's not my problem. You asked, how could she prove it to you? I just needed to prove that she can do what she said she'd do. That doesn't prove the supernatural.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this, but for people who have the supernatural on the table, she got everything they need. She got testimonies from doctors. She got the names of the doctors. She got the fact that there's
people who have
evidence of
supernatural on the
trickery.
table are irrational.
Why would you say that?
Because nobody in the history of the world has demonstrated a rational justification for considering the supernatural as a viable explanation for anything.
I'm curious, is this the only
So,
example you have of like it's if this is your reason for believing the supernatural, why do you believe like even let's say this thing actually happened and was true. So what, maybe one time for this one instance the supernatural existed and now we've never had evidence of it ever before or ever again?
yeah, yeah, why not?
Oh, you're
Well, then
not
why
for
does it
real.
matter? Why does it matter then? Why should we care about that?
Well, for on, she said horrible things about this horrible god that would destroy everyone that he even was wearing a tattoo. So,
And why is there no more evidence? Why is nothing repeatable that she supposedly experienced or was able to prove? Why are we having to take why is this the best evidence, which is really not evidence?
because that horrible god wants us to have faith in him.
So this one person got this and we just are supposed to believe it. Do you not hear how crazy this sounds?
I know it sounds a little bit unhinged, but
What is
it
it? What
also
is it
sounds.
that what is your motivation to believe that it's true? Because I don't know that the reasons you're giving us are what have you convinced about the supernatural.
Well, why I'm inclined to believe it's true. I'm not. I'm a misotheist Christian. I believe God exists, but he's a horrible being. And
And and this is your one reason for believing is this lady with this story from forever ago with no actual evidence other than the story you're telling?
well, like I said, there's named doctors with their testimony that there's no
There are
explanation.
doctors
They couldn't
that
diagnose.
have testimonies. There are doctors that have said testimonies to the exact opposite, that have said there's a loving and kind God and all. So why are we taking this one little anecdotal situation and taking these doctors' words for it? This is so I just I'm not trying to call you a liar. I'm very curious as to your belief because I feel like there's another layer here that we're not getting the full information of. Like why you actually really believe that this God exists. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this
I did.
one weird situation is enough to compel you. But I've heard way more compelling, weirder stories, and I still don't believe those things. So I'm just confused how this particular situation has such a hold on you.
I was raised Seventh-day Adventist by my mother and my father. I didn't look it up. I didn't know how horrible my God was until I started thinking about it. But uh, it's, but when I started to searching it, I just fell into a terrible depression because I could give up my belief. My belief. Even now, I can just give my belief that God exists and that this one situation with her proves it. That and the other, she predicting a meeting of the American Sentinel magazine, but that's another history. Uh, uh, it's just I can adopt you guys' worldview because for me it sounds cynical. It's a cynical worldview.
Well,
I'm sorry.
hold on. You have no idea what I believe about the world. You don't know what my worldview is. So that feels pretty offensive. I'm taking time to get to know and hear what you think, but you don't know what I think.
There's a difference between
Okay,
cynicism and
sorry.
skepticism. Cynicism would be saying the supernatural is bullshit and doesn't exist, and everybody who believes it is an idiot. That would be cynical. Skeptical is nobody's demonstrated any evidence-based justification for determining that the supernatural is possible, plausible, or should be accepted as an explanation, and therefore it is not rational, no matter who you are, to accept that the supernatural is real until that changes. That's not cynicism. That is proper epistemology to say that I'd rather believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. And so to avoid believing false things, I'm not going to believe things based on fallacies. And it is definitely a logical fallacy to say, I can't think of a better explanation. We haven't been able to find a natural explanation, therefore it must be supernatural. Until we understood the natural explanation for lightning, people were running around thinking that lightning was supernatural. They were wrong.
Yeah, but it's exactly the one-time event nature of this event of Ellen White's visions that I believe was supernatural, because God just wanted to talk to these people and just reveal how awful he is.
Marcos,
And
sorry to interrupt you,
the-
but Matt already thoroughly went down that rabbit hole with you and discussed why that's just not a believable situation. I'm more interested in you at this point. Is there any chance that you were raised and indoctrinated to believe that this God exists and yet it doesn't exist? Like, is there a chance of that in your mind, that this God does not exist?
Well, I would say a 10% chance that he doesn't exist.
A 20% chance?
Yes.
That's a
About that.
pretty huge, I mean, I really appreciate your honest answers here. That's a big enough gap that if I were you, I would really take time to look into that. Recovering from religion is an incredible resource because to me, it sounds like you're someone that's been raised in this, and you said that it's a terrifying God, and I'm worried for you that instead of approaching this with critical thinking, you're approaching it with fear, which is what's blinding you to be able to even hear what Matt is saying, where he's kind of walked you through why this doesn't make sense. And I also encourage you to go back and listen to the call, especially the part between you and Matt, because I think Matt did a great job pointing that out and following you through that thought. But now you're back to it. You're back to saying the exact same things. And that's all I think I have to add to the conversation. I don't know, Matt, if you have more questions, but I feel like we're at if we're getting to the point where, Marcos, you're just repeating this woman's thing and that's your reason, I think we kind of talked that through.
I'm just wondering, if you think that there's a 20% chance that you're wrong, that means you think it's 80% likely that a God exists. And I'm wondering, how did you reach the conclusion that it's 80% likely that a God exists?
Because I imagine, let's say a God exists, and he wants people to have faith in him. That's how the history, and he's omnipotent, and he's omniscient, and he's all of those things. And he wanted to really, really see who really have faith in him. And then there was a great disappointment.
I'm really confused because it sounds like you're saying, I imagined, hey, what if there was a God that these people claim there are? And what if he has the motivations that these people claim he has? It would be just like this. But why would you expect anything else? If somebody tells you that they're trying to make sense of a God and they have these particular descriptions from religious texts, wouldn't it be more surprising that their God didn't serve as an adequate explanation for those texts?
I don't know what you mean here.
Okay. If a book describes and a tradition describes faith being some sort of requirement, you're already poisoning the well, another logical fallacy, by assuming, hey, what if there is a God that wants people to believe because of faith? Well, I would say if there was a God that wanted people to believe because of faith, He wouldn't send visions to somebody that you found compelling, because now you're not believing based on faith, you're believing based on visions.
Yeah, that's also yeah, I'm compelled to believe. In my worldview, like I said, I'm compelled to believe now. Uh, so I see where you're going with this. But there, for example, there are people like you, people with your worldview that won't believe based on the evidence I provided or the visions of this one woman. So
But you haven't
there's still a
provided
possibility.
evidence.
Well,
If I told you the
if,
exact same story and I just had it slightly different and it's about an angry fairy instead, I don't think you would be very compelled to believe me.
no, if you have the words of doctors about the doctors and physicists and other scientific people that this angry fairy exists, or that there is no natural explanation for the acts of the angry fairy, then I would be compelled to believe. In my worldview, I would be compelled to believe. But I see nobody. I mean nobody even demonstrate that in other cases.
Demonstrate what other cases?
Can I ask, why couldn't it be, what happened is it actually is an angry fairy, but she posed as this angry god instead and gave the visions and created this whole thing just to deceive you?
That would be unlikely, but
Why?
I admit that's a possibility.
Why would that be
I
unlikely?
admit that because
Why is it less likely than the
it's
situation that
more
you
likely
presented?
it's more likely to believe. It's more likely that she was saying that the source of her visions was right, and you see to her
How would
life
she
and her.
know? How would she know if she was being deceived?
She would. Uh, she wouldn't, but
Right.
it's, it's just that to me, her record shows to me that there's really is this angry God, this
Where
horrible,
does the
horrible
record
God.
where does the record show that it's impossible for it to be this angry fairy instead tricking you into thinking it's the angry god doing this?
There's no evidence for it, for an angry fairy.
Is
And
there evidence to distinguish between an angry God and stories that aren't true that would lead people to think there's an angry God?
uh, uh, well, I you think these stories are not true because I have a PDF on an Adventist researcher. I don't know how I could send it to you. That
I don't need you to
details the
send me
history.
anything. I studied about Ellen G. White years before I ever had a conversation with you. I've looked this over, as have skeptical researchers and countless people for years. You don't have access to information that the rest of us don't have access to. I do not have reason to believe that the stories are accurately describing what took place. Here's what I think probably happened, because this took place in the realm of spiritualism, where there was a lot of this going around, and almost all of it that was ever, well, almost all of it was ever investigated was confirmed to be fraudulent. This is what Houdini did, went around exposing spirit mediums. And it's really easy for people to fall into that and think there's more happening than there is. As a matter of fact, Ray Hyman with the Center for Inquiry, um, he investigated a number of different things, and he also investigated proposed psychics, and he learned how to do cold reading. And he got so good at it that he convinced himself that he had those abilities for a time. It's very easy to fool yourself into thinking that you're getting messages and then saying things to people and having it impact their lives and thinking that you must have gotten that message from God or you must have received this message. There's no evidence that anything other than some woman thought she got messages from a God, shared those messages, other people believed them. What other evidence is there of this path from God to people other than those three things?
It's not just these three things, because then it would be really easy. It just be
I just
really,
asked,
really easy.
I literally just asked, what other evidence is there beyond those three things that someone thought they got messages from a God, they shared those messages, and people believed those messages came from God? What other evidence can you provide that suggests that people believing messages came from God is because it actually came from God?
I didn't say that their message, that people believing that they're from God, it necessarily means that they're from God.
No, you said that it means they're from God if we can't think of a better explanation.
Well, yeah, because the paranormal is on my table.
No. The paranormal should not be on your table. You do not have rational evidence. You do not have justification for including the paranormal as a possible explanation.
Um, is the Arthur Conan Doyle fallacy will say that if there's no natural explanation, then there must be supernatural.
No. The Arthur Conan Doyle is saying that if you can't, essentially, once you've ruled out all natural explanations, it must be supernatural, except that you can't rule out all natural explanations because you do not understand all of nature.
Yeah, but find me someone that doesn't breathe for 2 hours and can still be alive.
You find me someone who doesn't breathe for 2 hours, and we will take them and put them in a hospital and have the best experts, including magicians and con artists, stand there and observe and detect. And if in fact they can go 2 hours without breathing and stay alive, then at that point we would be able to say, hey, we've confirmed that someone can stay alive without breathing for 2 hours, and we still would not have confirmed the supernatural. We just would have confirmed something happened that we don't have an explanation for. You do not get to say, therefore it's supernatural, just because you can't think of how it happened. That is a fallacy.
Right.
Right. Let's leave it there with you just saying right, because you are going to keep going with this because you don't have, do you have any good reason to think that the supernatural is possible?
Hmm. Uh, do you have any good reason to believe the word is possible? The word is possible. I mean,
That what is possible?
the word, the entire word. You could be a brain in a vat for all I know. I
Okay,
could
goodbye,
be
Marcos.
a brain in a
Goodbye,
vat.
Marcos. Say goodbye.
Bye, people. Nice talking with you. I'm way back.
Thanks, Marcus. Check out Recovering from Religion because I think
Yeah.
there's a lot going on
And
there.
I don't know, more thoughts on, here's the thing. If I ask somebody, hey, do you have a reason, an evidence-based reason to believe this? And they're like, well, do you have a reason for this? The answer was no. It was an obvious no. It was an admitted
Right.
no. If you had
Yeah.
evidence, you'd come up with it. You wouldn't ask if I had evidence for something else. And when you devolve into bringing up hard solipsism, when your view has been challenged to the point where it's definitely not rational to hold, and the only thing you can come up with is to say, well, you can't even prove that reality is real. You don't have a solution to the problem of hard solipsism. You have divorced yourself from all rational conversation and admitted that you either don't know what you're talking about, or you're trolling, or you are not worth listening to. Either way, we have other callers. By the way, there's more shows here on the line, including a Sunday show after dark that's coming up at 6 or so. I think there's probably a calling it now at 4 Central in about 2 hours. I may be wrong, but I didn't look at the schedule, and that's my fault, not Arden's fault. She's doing a wonderful job over there.
Didn't, so I'm being a terrible co-host, but you know.
That's all right. You are never a terrible co-host. So we have Jim in Oklahoma. Jim's a pronouns are he, him. He's a theist who wants to talk about archaeological evidence for Jesus. Hey, Jim, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad.
Can you hear me?
We can.
I'm sorry. There's a delay. You can hear. Sorry, there's a delay, so it kind of cut up. My bad.
Yep. Hello?
Hello? Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So you're on with me and Promise. What archaeological evidence do you have for Jesus, and what does it prove about Jesus? Because my research doesn't show any archaeological evidence for Jesus, and certainly nothing that would prove that Jesus was in any way divine. So what do you got?
Yeah, it's more so the archaeological evidence for Noah's Ark, which then kind of indirectly.
I'm sorry, Jim. I'm not aware of any archaeological evidence for Noah's Ark, but if we found a boat, well, all right, it says here archaeological evidence for Jesus. I don't know what this has to do with Jesus, but go ahead. Present your archaeological evidence for Noah's Ark and show us how you know it's Noah's Ark.
Okay. So it recently, like a couple years ago, there was a rock formation in Turkey at the top of Mount Ararat. That is the boat.
Are you just pranking me?
That is what
because
boat?
This has been debunked a gazillion times. This is one of the oldest, most tired arguments ever. And how do you know that's Noah's Ark?
What do you mean? It's the same length and everything.
Okay, you're not for real.
It's literally
It's
not
shocking
also,
that you stayed on hold this time and you're not for real. Well, let's put out a call to theists of all stripe. I'm happiest, I mean, granted, we know a little bit more about Christianity than we do about Islam or Scientology or Mormonism and things like that. But I'm happy to take any theist who's actually honest and not just playing at apologetics. Because when you say, ooh, I've got archaeological evidence for Jesus, and then when we get to the actual call, it's actually archaeological evidence for Noah's Ark. And then you cite some of the oldest, tiredest, ooh, we found a structure at the top of Mount Ararat, and it's the same length. And I'm like, okay, you found it. By the way, you guys can all go look into this. I haven't actually looked into this in probably 10 years, but I did it several times while I was deconstructing. Promise, did you look into biblical archaeology on Noah's Ark and stuff during your process of deconstructing as well?
I did. And also I went to Israel and Jerusalem as a teenager and, expected to see all the archaeological evidence. And a lot of what I saw there is what triggered some of my questioning. So, but yes, it was very much part of my process.
It's strange to me because I remember like I grew up in the 70s and early 80s. I was born in 69. And there were shows on TV, the Great Mysteries. And I remember like Chariots of the Gods and Von Daniken's the constant alien things, and then Nazca lines and this. And then there was, Ron Wyatt, the grand fraud, running around claiming, oh, we found a chariot wheel at the bottom of the Red Sea, and we found, Noah's Ark. Right? But it wasn't always him. There were a lot of them that were doing this. And it would be like, oh, we think we found, we found Noah's Ark. And I remember there was the search for, and one of them was the search for Noah's Ark and stuff. And my memory on all this is absolutely flawed. But what I do remember is that at no point did any of these confirm that they were what they said they were. I don't know how you could possibly show that you found Noah's Ark, and it is like his name carved into it. And even if you did, we know the story is bullshit. We know that's not how animal life was dispersed around. And you can go to the Ark Encounter. I love the fact that somebody called while the Ark Encounter protest is going on. Literally, Seth and Noah and all those people are up there right now protesting the Ark. And you can go and you can tour it, and you can see there ain't no way in hell you're fitting two of everything on that that boat. It's cartoonishly ridiculous. Not to mention all the other problems with the Noah's story, that you couldn't have a flood that flooded the entire
Right,
earth.
a global flood.
Yeah, that's why they're saying, oh, well, when they say the whole world was flooded, it just means locally the whole world. Cool. There's local floods all over the place. Anyway, when I ask you how you know it was Noah's Ark, what do you mean? It's the same length. Okay. Well, then I guess my penis is John Holmes' penis. It's the same length. All right. That was a bad joke, but I'm trying to have some fun. I think we actually have some maybe sincere theists calling in now. So
Please.
Joseph is calling from California, pronouns are he, him. Responding to the prompt, is God real? Wants to know what we mean by God and real. Hey, Joseph, welcome. You're on with me and Promise.
Hey, hi, how are you? I'm a big fan.
Well, we'll fix that. No, thank you. By real, I just mean actually exists. I don't want to define that as like, because some people's view of their God is that he exists outside of space-time, and I don't understand how that is a concept that even makes sense, but I'm open to having it explained. And when it comes to God, I tend to go with some derivation of the agent creator, but I don't want to put too much into that, because, for example, the God that I believed in as a Southern Baptist was slightly different than the one I believed in when I was at a Pentecostal church. And that's different a little bit from others within different versions of Christianity. And it varies a little, God of classical theism. So we generally say, tell us what you believe and why you think we should believe it as well. So the thing of, is God real? Does God actually exist? It's a prompt to get believers to call in and say, I believe in this God. I'm convinced it's real, and you should believe it for this reason. Clear?
Yeah, I understand that. I guess the reason why I asked for a definition is that we're evaluating a proposition. And if we can't agree on the definition or the terms at hand, then we're almost talking past each other at that point. And
that's why we ask what you believe and why. It's up to you to define it.
Error.
My question would be, my question would be, do you believe that a God exists? It says you're a theist, so I assume that you believe a God exists. So then our next question to you would be, what God, or how would you define this God? Things like that.
Sure. If we both would at least agree to a propositional agreement based on definition, we could say God is transcendent, non-physical.
We're not saying anything. You're saying that you're a theist. I want to know why you're a theist. You are welcome to explain and tell me your definition. It has nothing to do with me or with Matt.
Well, fair enough. But what I'm asking is that, can I ask this? What evidence would you consider and accept in regards to the proposition.
Have you
How could I
watched the show
possibly answer
before?
that? First of all, I can't answer that until you define what God you're defending. If you say my God is a coffee cup, cool. I would have different standards of evidence for the coffee cup than I would for my God is the all-knowing, all-powerful,
Well, that's
all-good
fair, but that still
creator of
doesn't
the
that still
universe.
doesn't answer my
And
question.
and I wasn't done talking.
I
For
apologize.
most definitions of God that people have given, I have no idea what evidence would change my mind, but that's not my problem. Your job is to say what evidence you think should change our mind and
And
then
there's also
present
Well,
it.
well,
there's also
that's
thousands
what
of
I'm trying
people
to
that are
understand.
watching. But there's also thousands
Mhm.
of people watching, and primarily this is out there for other people to watch and learn from. So,
Mhm.
you know, whether I tell you some exact thing, this is exact evidence that it would take for me, may not be the same for everyone else. Or maybe if I'm saying nothing would convince me, there are still all kinds of people that are listening right now. So if you have a good reason, we want to hear it. And there will be lots of people that hear it. So even if I'm just this grumpy person who's not going to believe whatever you have to say, there are other people listening.
Plus, I got completely interrupted right in the middle of the standard answer that I've given for decades, which is
Mhm.
I don't know what evidence would convince me. But if your God
Okay.
exists, if your God exists, your God should
Mhm.
absolutely know exactly what evidence should convince me and has not presented it, which means either your God does not exist or your God does not want me to know that it exists. Either way, it's not my problem.
Well, I guess what I was trying to get at hand is that if we can't accept each other's definition, then no evidence can be presented to
It's not
convince
in
you at
each
that
other's
point.
definition. I don't know how many ways I can explain this to you.
Well,
It
I
is
don't
not a
have a
matter of
definition for
each,
a God.
it is not a matter of each other's definition. Either you have a definition and we assess it, or you don't. Do you have a definition of your God?
I do have a definition.
Then
That's
fucking
not
give it,
what I'm trying to
please.
get. That's not what I'm asking at this point.
Oh my
But you don't
God.
get to call in and ask us, Joseph, you're not is he gone or are we just muting him?
No, I muted him because
Okay.
I'm about to have to
Yeah.
donate $50 to charity because Joseph absolutely is absolutely refused. Here it is, Joseph. I'm going to unmute you. You get to define your God however the fuck you want. You get to say, I believe in this God. Here's its characteristics. And then we can say, okay, we're not going to bother with that definition. You've defined your God as your eyeglasses. Okay, great. But if you define a God that we don't believe is real, then the next thing is for us to say, okay, why should we believe that that God is real? And then you present your case for why we should believe that God is real. I've done this for 20 fucking years. I do not need to sit here and talk about, well, can we agree on no, we're not going to agree on a definition because I talk to countless people who believe in many different gods. I don't have a definition of God. You do. I don't believe in a God. So I'm going to take you off mute. All you need to do is tell us what God you believe in whatever way is easiest for you to say, okay, my God is this, and this. And then we'll either ask follow-up questions for clarity so we can understand what you're talking about, or we'll let you go on to, here's why you think we should believe it. I don't need a lecture on how we need to agree to terms. I need you to define your God so that we can begin assessing it. Otherwise, you're just wasting time. So let's try this again. Joseph,
Sure.
what God do you believe in
yes,
and why should we believe it?
Yeah. But you didn't let me speak earlier, and I thought that was
Joseph, please don't. I would like to have the conversation with you, but this is so painful and we haven't even gotten into the conversation yet because you're ticking off every box of like what we get from the worst calls possible. If you
Joseph's a
can
liar.
please just answer the question.
Joseph, I'll warn you right now. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself because I'm not going to let you bust my Zen. But you're a fucking liar. I did, in fact, let you talk. We did ask you, and we did answer, and we did explain stuff. And you've done nothing but whine like a little baby. And now when I took you off mute, you decided to whine again. So I'm going to take you off mute again. I'm going to mute myself. You're welcome. And Promise is going to school you on how to actually have a conversation. And you're either going to do it well, or I'm going to move on to one of the other three theists who are on hold, who are not absolutely mind-numbingly obnoxious in refusing to defend and define what they believe. So let's try this again. We got Joseph from California, pronouns are he, him. Joseph is going to tell us what God he believes in and why.
Hi, Joseph.
Yes, how's it going? Hey.
So what God do you believe in?
The only thing I wanted to get
Joseph,
is you brought up belief. You brought up belief. Hold on. You brought up.
Joseph, if I could mute you, I would.
No,
I unfortunately
Joseph, you don't get to
lost my
tell
button.
us to hold on.
Jesus.
You don't get to. Matter of fact, I'm willing to hang up on Joseph right now and go on to one of the other theists because I don't think Joseph is serious.
I found my mute button, so I would like to give him one last chance just to show how patient I'm being.
I didn't know you were on there. You go right ahead. You mute and unmute
I just
to your
found
heart's
it,
content.
finally.
But I'm warning you
I
now,
have it.
not you. I'm warning the audience now.
No, I know.
Joseph's a fucking liar.
Yeah, I think so too. So Joseph, I'm assuming you can hear me right now. If you can stop talking to hear the question I'm going to ask you. I'll ask it again once I unmute you. But the question is, what God do you believe in? So, hi, Joseph. Can you hear me?
I could hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Great. Yep. Can you tell me which God it is that you believe in, or define your God for me? Whichever way you want to answer that is totally fine.
Well, before I do that,
nope, I will not be answering any questions. I muted you again. And so here's one last chance. There's no before I do that. There's no asking me any questions. There's answering this question or we're moving on, like Matt said. I'm being super nice and letting you stay on just if nothing else to prove a point that we've given you a million options and let you talk. This is how the show goes. The fact that you have gotten this far into the call and we still don't even know what God you believe in is crazy. So Joseph, you're back again. Would you like to tell us what God it is that you believe in?
You're not being honest with me and you're muting me.
Bye.
Told you.
That was nice. I hung up, everybody. It was me that did it. That was so dishonest and gross.
There's absolutely no way that Joseph was ever going to do or say anything that got anywhere near a point. Joseph was here
I think
to
he was
try,
a troll.
Yeah, he was going to try
Jordan
desperately to bust my Zen. And he came really, really close. But I've done this for a while. And Joseph, that was embarrassing. I don't know what God you believe in, but you are an absolutely train wreck of a bad ambassador for that God. And I won't be faulting that God at all for or the other believers in that God. I can't really because I don't know which God
still don't
you're
know
advocating
which
for.
God.
So it's
that was wild.
It is incredibly wild and predictable that, I don't know how simple this is, but evidently, even in Oklahoma, they're not simple-minded enough to just answer the question, hey, tell us what you believe and why, and more importantly, why we should believe it.
Right.
Instead, it's, well, let me ask you what evidence would change your mind. Literally, at the start of the show, I said, if your position in any way is contingent on what Promise and I believe or believed, you failed already. It's not dependent on what our definition of God doesn't matter. Let's stop. Let's let Joseph go, and we'll.
Oh, I hung up on him, by the way.
Yeah. We'll go on to pick one. I'm fine. You do.
Okay.
It.
Let's see. Let's talk to. I thought we already talked to. I wonder if my caller screen thing is not right because it's showing callers that we already talked to. Um, I'm only seeing one that we haven't talked to.
Oh,
Like Jim from earlier, right? Isn't that somebody we already talked to? Or is mine just
yeah.
messing up?
Although
Sorry,
I
guys,
think
this is
I think Jim called back, but we'll take somebody
okay.
else. So can you not see the
Okay.
other two?
Oh, now I can see the bottom one too.
Okay.
Oh boy. Okay, let's talk to Benjamin. Hey, Benjamin, you are live on the Sunday show with Promise and Matt. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing today?
Doing
Not too
well.
bad. How are you? Well, you
Can
already
you hear me
answered
all
that.
right?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'm doing great. How are y'all doing?
We'll find out in a couple of minutes. It's getting really difficult to get people to tell us what they believe and why we should believe it. Can you do that?
Oh, I know. I can.
Yeah,
Yes,
it
I
says
can. Okay.
okay.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm eager. It says you say in your description, God is real. So I love that you're starting there. So can you tell us which God it is that you think is real?
Yeah. So I would say there's a couple layers, but just for the start of conversation, the main God that I believe in, I would describe as source consciousness or intelligent infinity. And this is the God that resides at the center of all creation, that started all things come from it, right? This might be what you would think of archetypally as your classic, God the Father. It's not quite all knowing, all powerful, all loving, but it falls into a lot of those categories. And the idea is that this God, it cannot interact with us directly. It cannot talk to us directly, but we can experience it through dreams, visions, inner work, meditation. And throughout time, millions of people have come in contact with this force and created their own religions based off of it. And ultimately, all institutional religions are corruptions of a single divine truth.
Okay.
So that's
Okay,
my
so how
general
do you know
opinion. I
that?
can go into specifics.
Oh, go ahead. Promise.
Yeah, how do you know that that God or force, as you said, exists?
Okay. So my main argument for the argument of supernatural, proof of the supernatural or proof of the spiritual, right? The world that we live in is always pressing us for evidence, right? We need to see proof. We need to see external validation, right? And so the world, which is material, is trying to convince us to find evidence that is material. But if you could bear with me here for a second to quote Dumbledore from the last Harry Potter book, of course this is all happening inside of your head, but why should that mean it's not real? So just a little thought experiment. If tomorrow
Why should it mean that it is real? I feel like we're gonna go
okay.
through a
No. That's a totally valid question. So like tomorrow, for example, if you were walking down the street and all of a sudden the most stereotypical cartoony angel from like a painting, time froze all around you and it descended and it had a conversation with you, right? And then it floated back away and time resumed. Would your instinct to be that you just had an interaction with a divine force, or would you go check yourself into a mental hospital?
I have no idea what I would do in that situation. I would have to experience it
Not
and
only
then
do I
I'd
not
figure
have
out
any
from there.
idea what I'd do in that situation, I don't know why it is that when we ask people to provide a justification for their position, they come up with fanciful things that don't seem to happen.
Okay. Well, then I can give you my evidence. My evidence is I've seen it, I've experienced it, but that's not good enough for you because
You've
I can't
seen what?
externalize that.
What you've seen? What?
God, the divine, spirituality.
How do you know?
Aliens. Because
How do you
I've
know?
entered deep into meditation and astral projected. And
No.
How do you know that that's
so,
real?
So first of all,
How do you
if
know
you
it's
have
real?
actually astral projected and you can prove it, you could earn $1 million.
Okay. Well, again, this is one of those things where there's two worlds, right? There's the mental and the physical. And a big part of human philosophy has always been
I don't think those are
trying
two
to
worlds.
understand.
I don't think there's
Well,
two
exactly.
worlds. I think there's one world, and then there's your interpretation of that world. How do you
Okay,
know
so you think the
that the
mental phenomenon
dreams?
is
How do you know
purely a
that you?
byproduct of the materialism?
How do you know? How do you know that you actually astral projected and met God?
Because you're experiencing it.
Okay.
And that's the thing, is
How
that
do you know
only
that
the
your
person who's
understanding of
experiencing it
how do
knows
you
it's
know?
real.
How do you know that your understanding, your interpretation of your experience is accurate?
Well, because it's just what you're experiencing. I mean, there's always room for nuance and discernment, and ultimately,
So,
I
so
mean,
when
You're a
nothing
no,
fraud.
can be
hold
known
on.
for
So
sure.
when a
I'm not a troll.
lady, so when a lady
You are a
hears
fraud.
from God, when she says that God told her to kill her children, and she knows it, you might not know that it's real, but she knows that
Oh,
it's real
sure.
because she's the one that
Mhm.
experienced it. What is the difference between you and her?
Or discernment, psychosis. Everyone's in their own place at their own
How would
time.
one know? How would one know if they're detecting God or if they're experiencing psychosis?
That's a great question.
Yeah,
I
it's fundamentally
can't really answer
identical to
that
the one I asked
in
you,
the
which is
moment.
how do you know your interpretation of your experience is accurate?
All right. Well, it's a great question. The best I could say is, immediate discernment of the result, but obviously people, honestly, actually, separate answer. I think all mental experiences, are real to some degree.
Okay,
Now,
I
people
don't
can
care what
be
you think.
entities
I
can
care
master it. Okay.
why you believe we should think that, because you can think that
Mm-hmm.
all mental understandings are real. I don't believe
Mm-hmm.
that, and I don't see any reason to do that.
Okay. Let me ask you this question.
No, why don't you
Is
give us
there
a justification for
Okay,
your
fine,
position?
go ahead.
There's no question you could ask us that could be relevant to whether or not you have an evidence-based position.
Okay, fine. Okay, we'll go off the astral projection. I have a separate way that I can prove spirituality.
How do you know you've ever astral projected and define what it is?
Okay. Astral projection is physically and consciously a completely different experience from lucid dreaming or, meditation or
Telling me what it's not is not telling me what it is. If you
Okay, what it is
in
when your
astral
consciousness
projection,
leaves your body during a state.
Benjamin, in astral projection,
Yes.
you are Benjamin, in astral projection, you're convinced that your consciousness leaves your body, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I couldn't hear you.
Yes. Yes.
How can you prove that your consciousness left your body?
Okay, the only experience that I personally have that proves it for me is that
No, that's not the way
when
proof works. That's not the way
Okay, well
proof
then,
works.
okay, then to answer your question, two people would independently astral project to the same location and see each other.
How can you prove that?
Because those two people would both see each other in the spirit realm.
Okay.
If you and I both astral projected tonight at midnight and we both chose to go to Disney World together, if I see you there at Disney World tonight and you see me there at Disney World tonight, that would be proof, no?
We should be able, like, if we could both astral project, you and I could both astral project at midnight, meet up at Disney World,
Mm-hmm.
and I could give you a secret number that only I know, and you would be able to give me and everybody else that secret number tomorrow, right?
Yes, that's potentially possible.
Why has that never happened in the entire history of the world?
Okay. One, I would argue it has, but of course,
prove it.
Well, when
I asked
loves
you,
her child, it's one of those things that's like
personal
and
inquantifiable. No, sir. I'm going to mute you and I'm going to school you like the troll that you obviously are. How do you know a mother loves her child? Well, first of all, we're surprisingly good at reading psychological reactions. We're not perfect at it, but we can tell when someone's suffering, for example, postpartum depression, and they are not taking the actions we would normatively expect psychologically from someone who loves and is caring for their child. But I gave you a very specific scenario that if you and I Like, for example, if you and I met in person out on the street corner in physical meet space, and I gave you the passcode to my phone, you would be able to prove that to anybody by getting my phone, showing me the passcode. We would do it. This is why I came up with this scenario. If you and I both astral projected and I told you a secret number that then you could later use to reveal that we had in fact met in this. And I asked you why that never happens. And you think that it has. But instead of giving us any example, you went to, how can you prove that a mother loves her kid? This is an embarrassing admission that you're either trolling or you are not being honest about what evidence there is for this. Because the question I asked you, which is still hanging over my head, how can you prove that your consciousness left your body? And we came up with a test scenario. This is what the James Randi Educational Foundation would do. This isn't exactly the test scenario they would have come up with, perhaps, but they come up with a test scenario. And I'm saying nobody's passed that preliminary test, and you think they have, but instead of presenting the evidence for it, you decide to go down the how do you tell a mother loves her child thing. So I'm going to take you off mute. Benjamin, please do me a favor. It's good for my heart. It's good for my Zen. If you're just having a bit of fun, tell us you're having a bit of fun, and we'll move on, because there are other theists that you're being rude to with this absolute nonsense about astral projection. And if you're not just having fun, please provide the evidence of how we can demonstrate that your consciousness left your body.
I apologize. You're totally right. To answer your question,
I'm totally right. What? That you're just having fun?
Well, no, that I said like the mother's love thing, like that's off track. I wasn't trying to be disingenuous. I was just trying to make like a side comment.
I no longer believe you. Benjamin, how can you prove that consciousness left your body?
So, like you said, you would do the experiment. I believe that when you're astral projecting, you're never actually, projecting to the exact same.
I don't care what you believe. I care what you can demonstrate. This is not a show for you to call in and give a whole bunch of unsupported assertions about whatever fucking fiction. I'm sorry, I'm still talking. This is not a show for you to call in and present unsupported assertions. I specifically asked how you can demonstrate it. Why on earth should we believe something that you can't demonstrate?
I guess you're right in that regard. I can't talk about
astral
projection anymore. No, I have something else to talk about.
No, you don't. No, you don't. You think you do. But you think you had something else to talk about, but you have incorrectly interpreted your conscious experience. Hey, we got Hassan's calling from California. Pronouns are he, him. Says he's got human data from various religions that can infer that there's one God. Hey, Hassan, you're on with Promise and Matt.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. I think I called last time too. It didn't have the time to explain. But what I did, I studied Hinduism and Judaism, Christianity, Islam. So I see the population of this world is close to the people who believe in God is 4.5 billion people that believe some kind of God. But in that data, I found the Hinduism, the Vedas talks about the one God, just like Judaism talks about, just like Islam talks about. And just like Christianity has a different version, but initially the teaching of Jesus talked about the one God, and later on Christianity got this idea of triune God. This is a later development. So these all explanations, the Quran provides that, and it tells us there is only one God to be worshipped. And he gave also a definition, which is chapter 112. Allah is one God. He is eternal and self-sufficient. He begets not, nor is begotten, and there is none like him. So to me, makes sense. This God.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just real quick, I want clarity. Are you presenting a case for why there's only one God, or are you presenting a case for why a God exists at all? Because I'm a little bit concerned that
No.
we're headed in the direction of you're just trying to make a case that, well, there's one God exists, but we want to know, why do you think that that God exists? I don't really care if you're trying to say that all religions actually point back to one God. I want to know why you think that any God exists.
Because the information we just go through, because the God says, I communicated human beings to prophet and messengers. So
how do
when
you
he
know
talks
that
about
God has
Jesus-
how do you know that a God has
Yeah.
communicated to humans?
Okay. But because these prophets and messengers made this claim, Jesus made the claim, Moses made this
Okay,
claim,
I'm making the
Abraham made
claim.
this claim.
I'm making the claim that an elf told me there are no gods. Do you believe me?
Well, but when these people made the claim, actually, they were tested by the people around them, actually. So they believe in them, and that's why the tradition came off.
Then
But-
there would
and
actually be
maybe they
evidence.
demanded-
Then
Yeah.
then there would be
Yeah,
evidence. But
demanded
you
the
just told
miracle.
me that the evidence is that a God communicated to people. I'm asking you, how do we know for sure that a God has communicated with people before?
Yeah, what the prophets and messengers were given a special power, like a miracle, like a Jesus has
How
a
do you
miracle.
know?
Moses, yeah. Well, that's why the Quran, the last revelation explained that God says, "I gave this miracles." And
Why should I
the
believe what the
signs
Quran
for the
says?
people.
Why should I believe what the Quran says?
If you read that book, it makes sense.
I have read
then
it,
you
the
believe
English
it. Doesn't-
translation.
Yeah. If it doesn't make sense, because God says, I'm not going
Doesn't
to
make sense.
demand any. Yeah. Because the Quran says God will not going to punish anybody until He clarifies who He is actually. So it's obligation from God to clarify to human
Hassan,
beings who
why
He is.
should I why
Yeah.
Hassan, why should we believe that any God exists?
But that's the best explanation. If there is no explanation,
I have
we
not
can't believe that.
You haven't offered an explanation yet.
Hmm.
You've told me that people have
Well,
said
that's what I'm
things. I'm saying,
saying.
why should we believe them? Why should we believe them?
Yeah, when I read the book, it explained that God could make the claim that He created heaven and earth and everything around us, and He provides
Okay, so
rain and
Hassan, let me explain
Yeah.
something to you. Religious texts are the claims. So something like the Quran or the Bible, those are making claims. Those are not that's not evidence. I need to understand why I should take those claims, those texts seriously. Why should I care what those books say?
Well, I agree with you because today we don't have any prophet. We can demand a miracle or something, some kind of proof. The only thing left is a religious text. And that text makes sense. They will believe. It doesn't make sense. They will just wait until the God judges in the day of judgment. That's it. There is no other way because the only text makes convince, then you can accept. Doesn't convince, just leave it.
I'm afraid you've lost me. I'm sure that's my fault, but I'm confused. Do you think that we have reason to believe a God exists, or you're saying the best evidence there are these texts that are very much opposing each other?
No, the text clarified things, last revelation.
In your opinion, in my opinion, they're confusing, they contradict each other and themselves, and they don't offer any evidence of the supernatural. That part is not really my opinion, but.
Well, the thing is this: if you study the life of the prophet, and he also gave prophecies and things like, there is a lot of facts in the Quran about the natural world, So it talks about something
No, there's not. In fact, it says all kinds of stuff that goes completely against what we actually know about how the universe functions, both the Bible and the Quran.
Oh, a lot of people are still. I think probably I'm not a very good scholar on that, but you can approach the one who knows about science, technology, and all the thing, and they can correlate all your questions about it. But first time you just to go the plain reading, you might have understand. I did the plain reading. It makes sense to me.
I have read the English translation of the Quran, and I have read the Bible many, many times.
Yeah, the Bible it does not claim actually it's from God. The Quran claim it's from the Lord of the Word actually. It gave a
I don't
definition of
care.
God.
They both make all kinds of claims. Why should I believe any of those claims?
Well, what the thing is, the Quran clarified things because there's a transition from Adam to
Hassan,
mankind and the last prophet. It
you're
takes
not
the whole
answering my
story,
question. Why should I believe what the Quran says?
Yeah, well,
The
that's what I
answer
said,
cannot
this
be
is only
found
information.
within the Quran. So please tell me why I should believe the Quran.
Well, Quran gives the information about the human life, purpose of life, all those things, why he created everything. He talks about that. He talks about
Why should
he
I
created
believe
us.
it? Why should I believe it?
Oh, he provides the guideline, actually. That's why I said the book of guidance. So
Hassan,
if he created us,
if I showed you, Hassan, if I showed you 3 books that claim to be from God and describe the way God interacted with the world, are they all 3 true?
the one which makes more sense, for example, Prophet says the Arab is not superior to non-Arab, black is not superior to white, white is not superior. Everybody is equal inside of God, to make sense to me.
So the one that makes the most sense to you is the one that's true?
Well, the thing is, there's a lot of teaching and that makes sense, actually. Because
No.
humanity
I asked a very specific question. You said, I wanted to know if I showed you 3 books that claim to be from God, because so far all you've done is say, oh, it claims to be from God and it claims to have these answers. If I showed you 3 books that claim to be from God and had those answers, how would you tell if?
Okay, that's a good question. Okay,
yes,
what
I
I
know.
do, I will see all this. Okay, I will read all 3 books, which makes sense actually, because stories has to start and story has to end. And if it is the last revelation or last book, it will have to conclude that this is the last one, nothing else is going to come, and no prophet going to come. Or he's going to tell the next prophet will come or next revelation will come, but this is also. So if the story makes sense actually from beginning to the
Hassan,
end, and has it,
have you heard of the books have you heard of the book The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or any of those books?
I have there was the movie on the Lord of the Ring actually.
Okay. Yeah, so you know in general what I'm talking about. Those books to me make a lot of sense. It's beautiful storytelling, it's well done, it's consistent throughout. Does that mean that those books are true? That there are orcs and there are elves and there are hobbits out there?
Well, there's a lot of concept people took from previous scripture also too, you know.
Can you answer my question? Can you answer my question? Those books making sense, does it make them true?
Well, the thing is that if those books make claim that these are from God, then we're going to have to see why it makes
But
claim.
Hassan,
because if you read
Hassan,
makes this claim actually.
Hassan, if there are 3 books that claim to be from God, are you saying that the one that makes the most sense to you is the one that's true?
If 3 books claim from the God, then I have to look into those claim actually, if it's a true claim
Hassan,
or not actually.
Listen, Hassan, listen carefully to the question. I'm going to hand you 3 books. All 3 books claim to be from God. I asked you, how do we tell if any of them are true? And you said you would need to read them, and the one that made the most sense is the one that's from God. So the question is,
that's true.
The question is, of those 3 books, the one that makes the most sense to Hassan is the one that's true, right?
Yeah, I will look into it, what the message in that, you know. If it
Hassan, is it possible, Hassan, that was a yes or no question. Is it possible for a book to make sense to you and for it to not be true?
I didn't get it actually.
Is it
If I
possible?
write a,
I will read all. I will read all.
Is
three
it
books.
possible? Is it possible? Please stop
if it
talking
makes
and
more
think.
sense.
Please stop talking and think about the question. It's difficult.
Okay.
If there's a book that you think makes sense to you, is it possible that that book is also not true?
If I find other book as compared to this one,
I give up.
which I convinced.
I give up.
Hassan,
It's a yes or
Hassan,
no
if I-
question, and it's absolutely useless epistemology.
if I write a book, Hassan, and it makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
to you, it makes more sense to you than any book you've ever read, and I reveal to you in that book that I'm God, does that mean that I'm God?
But one more claim about the Quran. Prophet Muhammad was unlettered. He did not know read
Hassan,
and write.
I just asked
He
you a
refused
question and
it.
you just completely ignored me.
Yeah,
That is
that's-
so rude.
Yeah,
That's
Hassan's
incredibly
dishonest.
rude.
Okay.
Do you want to answer my question,
Go
or are
ahead.
we done with the conversation? My question is, if I write a
the thing
book
is-
that makes more sense to you than any book you've ever read before, and then I tell you in that book that I am God, does that mean that I am God?
But the thing is this, you said
This
you
is a
wrote the
yes or
book.
no
He won't
question,
answer.
Hassan. This
No,
is yes
but
or
the thing
no.
is,
So
I'm
either
comparing-
either
I'm
give me a yes
comparing-
or no, or
I'm
I'm going to hang up. I hung up on one person today. I feel like hanging up on another one if they require it. So can you answer my question? Does that make me God? Yes or no?
No, until unless I have to qualify the book because the Prophet Muhammad said he did not write a book. Angel Gabriel came
It's
and
so
delivered the book.
painful
Your
for
book
people.
Your book is
Nobody
from
gives
your
a
own,
fuck. I don't
ideas.
give a fuck. I don't give a fuck what you think the Prophet Muhammad read. I don't give a fuck if the Prophet Muhammad ever read anything. It's your job to convince us that I should in fact give a fuck what
No.
Muhammad said, and you have fucking
well,
failed to do that. I don't know why you're speaking.
No, okay.
Multiple times we've asked you to give a yes or no answer, and that seems to be completely impossible for you. The one time you managed to struggle through and partially give a part of a yes or no answer, you then had to add in a bunch of caveats. So give me a reason why we should give a shit what you think about what Muhammad wrote.
Muhammad did not write. He recited.
Okay, Hassan, I'm going to say this in the kindest Zen way. Fuck you. Goodbye.
Okay.
That was painful. I thought we were going to maybe go somewhere, and then when they stop answering the questions that we ask that are really easy questions to answer, that's game over, I guess.
I mean, we've had Hassan on a couple of times. This isn't the first time, and it's the same.
Okay.
It is. We're trying to figure out just for people who may be watching this for the first time. This is a call-in show where people should be calling in to present, hey, I believe this, and here's why you should believe it. And that's going to require us to ask certain questions, either to get to what it is you believe, which callers from Oklahoma evidently have brains so broken they can't get to what they actually believe, to, oh, I'm not going to give reasons. Or what happens quite often is that somebody will give reasons, like Ray, the dick from earlier, was pointing out. They'll give reasons, but they're not good reasons. And when we try to either ask the questions that expose that those reasons aren't good reasons, religions put barriers up in your brains to prevent you from thinking clearly about what is or isn't justified. Christianity is absolutely a con job. I have a video that's coming out that demonstrates this crystal clear. I've talked about it on a couple of shows recently. But we don't just take calls from Christian, and we're not just here to, just debunk. We'd like people to say, oh, okay, here's why I believe, and here's why you should believe. And when they say, oh, well, I believe because I just believe the supernatural. Okay, well, that's not a good enough reason for anybody else. You shouldn't believe that given the information you presented. Oh, I believe because the Quran claims to be from God. Okay, well, does the fact that a book claims to be from God mean that you have good reason to believe it is from God? No. Does the fact that a book makes sense to you? No. In part, Hassan, one of the reasons that the book makes sense to you is because you've grown up in a society that is indoctrinated and enculturated into the sorts of views that make those books make more sense. I'm surrounded by a predominantly, and I'm going to put air quotes, Christian culture here in the United States. There's a whole bunch of different denominations, and there's, probably no two Christians that have exactly the same views. But I grow up in that culture. And so kids in, for example, the United States now, even if it's simple things like Christmas, even if you do it in an entirely secular fashion, kids that are growing up in the United States, they get bits and pieces of Christian culture. This is why we think, or a potential reason why when some people have near-death experiences, even if they didn't grow up in a particular religion, they tend to have visions of religious imagery that match the culture surrounding them. You can't drive through town without seeing churches and steeples and angels. You can't live your life to be 13 without running across religion all over the place. Even colloquialisms. I say things because I'm not gonna let the Christians have all the best curse words. So when I say Jesus fucking Christ, I'm not suggesting there is actually a Jesus who was in fact the Christ. As a matter of fact, I have some incredibly knowledgeable friends like Justin and Dalton and others who will explain to you how Jesus didn't answer a single messianic prophecy. I'm not nearly as knowledgeable to go through all the potential ones there, but those guys are. To suggest that it makes sense to you is a good criteria for determining it's true is understandable and yet flawed. And all we're doing is asking questions that might show that flaw so that you might understand it. So we're going to go on to some other callers, and we're going to see if maybe they can tell us what they believe and why we should also believe it. Ethan's calling from Ohio, pronouns he, him, wants to say that God is real. Do you want to say more than that, Ethan? Because I don't think just saying God is real is going to get us much of a conversation.
Yeah, I would say that God is real because of the impossibility of the contrary, and that without God, you don't have a foundation for the laws of logic or uniformity in nature.
And which God are we talking about specifically?
This would specifically be the Christian God, although from what you've explained, that doesn't necessarily matter to you. Unless it does. Either way is fine.
No, it's helpful information. It adds some kind of familiarity to the conversation.
But let's start with, I guess, just logic. I don't know what you mean by you couldn't have a logical grounding without God. What's that mean?
Yeah. So I suppose to start off, we're having a debate and presupposing that the other person is going to be having a logical basis for what it is that we're saying. Otherwise, we're just kind of talking at each other, and that doesn't get us very far. So in order to have a logical basis for any argumentation, we have to assume the universality of the laws of logic, and that the laws of logic are not simply just conventions that people have come up with, but have an actual grounding in an absolute truth.
We just have to agree that they're true, not that they require some external grounding. Like, for example, identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle. You could, as I've said many times, you can diagram that out as a single circle, single Venn diagram where everything is either in the circle or not in the circle, and that accounts for or describes, I guess not accounts for, but describes identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle. And until such time as somebody can demonstrate that there's any possible circumstance under which one of those is not true, it's reasonable for us to operate on the axiomatic presupposition that they are true and that they are inviolate until somebody demonstrates that they can be violated.
Yes, I would agree with all of that. What my
Cool.
position
Then we don't need
is
God
that
for a
from
grounding.
Well, my position is that from your worldview, you don't have
No. You
appropriate
don't know what my
justification to make
worldview.
sense
I'm
of
sorry.
those.
I'm sorry, Ethan, but you don't know what my worldview is, and you just agreed to my position that the only thing that is required is that we assume that they are inviolate until someone demonstrates otherwise. That is not the same as what you're claiming. You're claiming that the only way we can trust logic is if we assume that it has a grounding in a God. And then you agreed with me that we can trust logic if we agree that it is true until someone demonstrates otherwise. My worldview is irrelevant to your claim that it requires a God. You need to provide evidence that it requires a God.
I see. May I ask what your worldview is?
You can ask.
Okay. What is your worldview?
I don't know that I have a label for my worldview. I, as I noted, accept identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle axiomatically as a pragmatic decision, because in order to even begin to try to demonstrate that they aren't universally true and inviolate, you would have to assume that they're true, which raises a contradiction. And I don't know any way around that. But my worldview, I don't even put a label on it. But let me ask you a follow-up question. How can my worldview be relevant to whether or not you have an evidence-based justification for your claim?
If, for example, your worldview was that of a atheistic or material nature, right? There can be some differences between those worldviews, but for example, if it's a materialist worldview, then all that is must by necessity be material. And I would argue that the
I'm sorry,
laws
you're
of
wrong.
logic. Okay.
I'm sorry, you're
In what
wrong.
way?
I'm not a philosophical materialist. I'm a methodological materialist. I am an atheist. But my question, what question do you think I just asked you?
So you had asked for what the justification for
Nope.
my assertion was.
Nope. That's not the question I just asked you. How can my personal worldview be in any way relevant to whether or not you have an evidence-based justification for your position?
My assertion would be that if a person has a materialistic worldview, that you could not account for the laws of logic.
I'm sorry.
That you are
I'm sorry. I'm
using
not
in
going
your
to.
argumentation.
I apologize,
You're
Ethan. I'm
repeating
not going to let you
yourself.
keep deflecting. It doesn't matter what my worldview is. My worldview is irrelevant to whether or not you can justify your own. You can try to assert all day long that as an atheist, which is why you needed to know my worldview, I can't provide a grounding for logic, but you can. But the truth is, you can't, or you would. And your attempt to do so is merely a dismissal of a competing worldview that does not say there isn't a God that serves as a grounding, but instead advocates for the necessary axiomatic assumption that these things are true, whether we know why or not, whether it could be another way or not. So once again, I'm going to need you to justify your claim without saying, oh, you're an atheist, you can't do this. My worldview is irrelevant to whether or not you have evidence for yours.
I would disagree with that assertion, but we can
Then you're
move
fucking wrong.
past it.
Then
There's
you're
also
wrong.
another person
And I
here
can prove it.
and an
You're wrong.
audience.
You're wrong, and I can prove it instantly. Ethan, did you reach your conclusion before knowing what my worldview was?
I did not know.
You didn't reach your conclusion until after you knew what my worldview was? You're a liar.
In what way?
You called in with your worldview and did not know what mine was, which means you reached your conclusion before you knew what my worldview was, correct?
I would not say that that's correct, no.
Why did you ask me what my worldview was if you already knew?
Well, I knew from previous conversations that you had with individuals from listening
I'm
to
sorry.
your
Why did you
conversation.
ask me what my worldview was if you already knew?
So that you could title it.
Cool. I don't need to title it. Here's the other thing. You're saying that Ethan did not reach a position until he knew what Matt's position was, right?
From knowing what your position was, I made my
God, you
argumentation
fuckers
off
are
of
so
that.
dishonest. Ethan, you're too dishonest.
How long have you been a theist, Ethan?
I was raised a theist.
Okay, and how long have you known that Matt exists?
I would say a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So
there we go.
A month ago, you did not hold this position, right?
I would, yes, I did hold this position.
Then Ethan, you're a liar. Then Ethan, you're a liar because you held your position before you knew what mine was, right?
I held the position in addition to knowing
I'm going to mute you, Ethan, and then I'm going to do my full Zen mode schooling and embarrassing of you because this is sad. This was a simple question. The reality is that what I believe is irrelevant to whether or not you have a justification for your position. This is something I said at the start of the show. It's something I said after other calls. I asked a pretty straightforward question. Thank you, Promise, for figuring out a different way to word it, which is if you've only known about me for a couple of weeks, then what my position wasn't relevant to the position that you held prior to knowing who I was. You might have known about people who held a position similar, but you didn't even get my position right when you were trying to pretend what it was. You went down the stereotypical cookie cutter, Philbro douche-nozzle, atheism, materialism requires X. See, you think you're well-versed in this stuff, but you are not. You are regurgitating the same tired straw man version. What if I had no position? Like, I'm a methodological naturalist. I'm not saying the supernatural doesn't exist. I just have no reason to think it does. That's methodological naturalism. In an atheistic worldview, if we were to go down this, I'd be willing to bet that you'd love it if I went down a Bayesian route as well. I bet you would. But in a world without a God, that's the world you're imagining. Matt's an atheist. So in his worldview, there is no God. And that means that he can't provide the same grounding for logic that I'd like to provide. And the problem is, I already acknowledged that at the outset, and you fucking agreed with me. Because it doesn't require that there be a God as a foundation. There doesn't even require that we agree that there's a God as a foundation. We just need to agree that until someone demonstrates there's any possibility for logic to not be reliable, the reasonable position is that it is. And in order to even attempt to disprove it or to prove that it wasn't, you would have to assume it's true to try to prove it isn't, which leads to a contradiction. And without anything beyond identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle, something completely separate from that, you would have no way of demonstrating that there's a problem with the contradiction. You've managed to tie yourself so up in knots that even when asking the most straightforward question of, did you hold your position before you knew what mine was, which should be answered with a simple yes, was answered with an embarrassing attempt, a fumble, to respin and respin and no. Well, let me get really technical. I didn't know I didn't know who Matt was, and I wasn't sure what Matt's position was. And yes, I got it wrong when we were talking, but I was at least familiar with that position, and I rejected it. You remind me of a guy I debated many years ago, one of the most arrogant fuckers I've ever had the displeasure of talking to. And that was Sloan Lee, who said that he had evaluated every possible objection to his moral position and found them all wanting, as if that's proof of anything. We're going to bring you back now, Ethan. And it says here that you want to argue that God's real. My position on whether God's real is my position on whether God's real in any way relevant to the reason you're convinced there's a God? Yes or no?
I'm sorry, the beep cut off what the last few words were. Could you say that again?
Is my position on whether or not a God exists in any way relevant to your justification for why you think God is real?
The simple answer is no.
Correct. So please provide your justification for why God exists.
So I would point to the testimony and the prophecies that were given in Scripture that were fulfilled throughout history as one of the reasons. I think that there are more reasons, but the way that I would evaluate evidence and the way that you would evaluate evidence would change the way that we would view it.
Pick one. Pick one testimony that you think confirms God.
I think that the accuracy of Jesus's prophecy about the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem before the death of his disciples would be a good place to start.
How do you know that Jesus made that prophecy?
We have it in Scripture.
Okay. How do you know the Scripture is accurate?
Because it was attested to by people from the time that Jesus was living, and it was also, died for by martyrs over the years, and it also contains truth.
I'm sorry.
And we have autographs.
Ethan.
Can I finish one last sentence?
No, we can't, because you're going to say we have autographs when we don't.
Well, if I can finish the sentence. We have autographs from before the time of the destruction of the temple. We don't have original autographs. We have the transcriptions of them from before the time of the destruction.
So I'm going to, we could sit here and dispute all of this because, first of all, the oldest copies that we have that refer to the potential temple they're after that. But let's assume for a second, I'm going to bend over backwards here, Ethan, and give you way more latitude than your case actually observes. Let's assume for a second that we have good reason to think Jesus existed, said something about the destruction of the temple, it was accurately recorded, and then that actually occurred. Let's just grant all of those things. I do not grant them, but for the sake of this argument, let's grant that. How does that confirm a God exists?
I would argue that a person being able to tell what the future is accurately and with the descriptions that were given, that would show that they are someone sent from God and would validate.
I'm going to hang up on you in a minute. Does that mean that I was sent from God if I actually hang up on you?
I think that that's not necessarily something that you're seeing in the future. I think that that's
I don't know
that
so here's the thing. You weren't listening. I granted that Jesus said something and it came true for the sake of argument. How do you know that he knew it was going to come true? And how do you know that him knowing it is because he was divine? How do you know it wasn't just coincidence or accident or things happening that he set in motion or that people were actively seeking to do? How do you determine what the cause of getting a prediction correct is?
I would say that with the specificity and the amount of things that would have had to have happened in order for those events to occur, like there are some particulars about how it is that all of this would take place. I think that something as simple as just saying this one thing is going to happen, such as hanging up the phone and saying this thing 40, 50 years from now is going to be happening, I think that those are two different categories.
I'm sorry, but you've given me absolutely nothing other than you think it's good.
I think that with the specificity that
What is the
given,
specificity? Give me a very here. Let's open the Bible. Give me a passage that is very specific.
I would go to Matthew. I would say that it's in chapter 23, and this would be in verse 36. There's a much longer context between all of it in 23, 24, and 25. But to summarize it,
I'm sorry.
says,
You said
"Truly I say
Matthew
to you,"
20. Matthew 23:36, right? That says,
is
believe
correct,
me when
yes.
I say that all of these things will happen to you, people who are living now.
That
What's
is
specific about
one
that verse?
translation, but yes.
What's specific about that verse?
There's larger context in the rest of the
I
chapters,
didn't.
23,
I'm sorry.
24, where
This is really bad because I didn't ask you to give me a passage that says, trust me, bro, and then say there's more context. You talked about the specificity. I want to know the passage with the specificity.
okay,
Because that passage that you gave, but Matthew 23:36 could just as easily be transcribed as, trust me, bro. Some of you are going to see this.
Also, I'm pretty sure that Matthew was written after the destruction of the temple anyways. So how is that?
So which question would you like for me to answer? The one on textual criticism or what the context around that verse is that gives that specificity that you
I
asked
don't need
for?
the context. I asked you for specificity. You gave me trust me,
Okay.
bro. And Promise mentioned that the best dating for the gospel that is attributed to Matthew is from 80 to 100 CE, which is after the destruction of the temple.
I would disagree with that dating, and there's other scholarly things that we can discuss with it.
I'm sorry, but
which way would
I'm
you
sorry,
like to go
but
with it?
you disagreeing with the dating, which is the dating of the bulk of Christian scholars as well. Like, for example, I pulled it up now. You can go to earlychristianwritings.com. This is not a site that is anti-Christian writing. This is a summary of the best scholarship and the estimated date ranges for all of these. And so Matthew, not the earliest gospel, has an estimated dating range of 80 to 100. Mark, on the other hand, is 65 to 80. And so you could make a case that perhaps Mark was written prior to the destruction of the temple, but what you can't do is show that it wasn't edited or manipulated after the fact. So in the case where we've got the gospel according to Matthew, which wasn't written by Matthew or an eyewitness, you want us to believe that despite the dating of the experts, your dating of putting it before this is better. And when asked for specificity, you gave us trust me, bro. I don't know that I trust your scholarship.
Did you make the claim that Matthew did not write the book of Matthew and that it wasn't
We have no reason.
eyewitnesses?
We have no reason to think that the book is that Matthew is in fact the author. That is a matter of church tradition, for which we have no evidence.
I would disagree that that's a matter of church tradition. But
okay,
Then
I
what's
think
the
that's
once
evidence?
again,
Give us
into
a
the weeds.
reason.
Yeah,
You
once
disagreeing
again,
means
you are
nothing.
disagreeing with the bulk of Christian scholars. So the fact that you're out here with some sort of esoteric view on Christianity seems to me you need to go write some books and publish and get yourself some credibility. Because, like, for example, I may not have my main Bible right here. Let me see if there's a cover page on Matthew for this. In my Bible, the cover page, yeah, it doesn't have it. In my other Bible, the cover page for Matthew literally says, We don't know who the author of this is. It's printed right there in the Bible.
Can I add another thing in? Even if we're being extremely gratuitous and saying, sure, Matthew wrote this before the destruction of the temple, during the time when Jesus was still alive, and he was writing this down as it was happening. What you have is you have Jesus saying, in light of what political turmoil that was happening, saying, hey, an important building is going to get destroyed. He doesn't say when. He doesn't say who's going to do it. He doesn't give descriptors as to exactly how it's going to go down. Nothing interesting at all. So while cool, you accurately predicted, this is if we're being extremely gratuitous and saying that this even happened. You're still just saying like, yeah, I think this important building is going to get knocked down someday. It's going to get destroyed. That is not a prophecy.
I don't want to use Wikipedia as a primary source, but there are linked sources there. Literally, on the Wikipedia page for the Gospel of Matthew, it says, per church tradition originating with Pius of Hierapolis, in his lost work preserved by Eusebius, the Gospel was written by Matthew, an apostle and a companion of Jesus. Most scholars view it as anonymous composition, as was common for biographies such as those of Plutarch and Suetonius, which were originally anonymous. So if you're not going to at least agree with the bulk of scholarship, you should be coming with a lot more.
Well, Eusebius in his writings in 265 attributed Matthew as the author of the book, as well as Origen in 185.
Yes. That's really cool. Thank you for citing the people who attributed it a century and a half afterwards. People who were not even alive when any of it happened, people who didn't. How bizarre. You are absolutely cherry picked. Are you a Catholic? Are you a Catholic or an Orthodox?
I'm not a Catholic. I'm a Protestant. I would say that as far as church history is concerned, it has not been the testimony of church history that this was an anonymous author when we have, church fathers from the 2nd and 3rd centuries who are attributing it to the author.
So I'm telling you what the bulk of scholars say, both on Wikipedia, which is aggregated and footnoted, and you can debate that as much as you want, as well as other sites. And granted, I'm not a scholar. I have friends who are scholars. I have associates who are scholars. We've had Bart Ehrman on the channel. We've had Justin Dalton, all these guys. Congratulations. You can cite some references that disagree, but would you at least agree that your position is not held by the bulk of New Testament scholars?
I would agree that there are many New Testament scholars who I would disagree with, yes.
That's not what I asked, and it's so bizarre how you tap dance to avoid the consequences. You say the Gospel of Matthew, it is reasonable to conclude that it was written by Matthew, and I say that the bulk of New Testament scholars disagree with you. Am I right?
I wouldn't say that it's the bulk. I would disagree with that assertion. I think
Wikipedia does, as does the sources that Wikipedia is citing, as does every New Testament scholar I've ever interacted with, as does the glossary, as does the fucking Bible that I have in the other room on the cover page for Matthew. So all of these sources that I can point to and reference suggest that my view is correct in that the bulk of New Testament scholars disagree with your assertion that Matthew was written by Matthew, and you disagree. Fucking imagine that.
And we're still, I feel like you're using this to avoid all the other points that are being made. The scholarly consensus is that, I'm looking it up now, is that Matthew was written after the destruction of the temple. So we already have a problem there. And then I was even nice enough to grant you, let's just say that all happened. Your whole point was that this is some prophecy that should be compelling evidence. And I'm telling you, it's not compelling evidence at all for somebody to be like, oh, I'm paying attention to what's going on around me. It seems likely that this thing might happen. Oh, it ended up happening eventually at some point, years and years later, without him saying when it would, how it would, all of that. But we're also avoiding the fact that Jesus made prophecies that absolutely did not come true.
Could you give an example of that?
Yeah, when he Here, I'll pull up the reference real quick.
Okay.
Hey, who wrote Luke Acts? While we wait.
I would say that Luke wrote both of those.
Do you think
And
the
that Luke was
scholarly
not an
consensus
eyewitness.
agrees with you?
I would say that there will be scholars on both sides of it.
Yes,
But
that's because
I
you're
would-
dishonest as
yeah.
fuck, because there is a scholarly consensus. And when I ask you if the scholarly consensus agrees with you, instead of actually answering the question that you were asked, you dishonestly try to pretend like, oh, there's going to be scholars on both sides. Yes. On the subject of is the earth flat or not, are there people on both sides of whether or not the earth's flat? The answer is yes.
Yes, there are.
But does the scientific consensus agree with flat earthers? The answer is no. Does the consensus of New Testament scholars agree with your view on the author of Luke Acts?
No.
No. Why didn't you just say that the first time?
I don't hold the view, and that's about that. I
No,
want
no,
to be
no.
honest
Why
with
weren't
what
you
my
honest the
position-
first time I asked you the question and you gave a dishonest answer? And then when I exposed your dishonesty and forced you into the right answer, you gave the right answer. And so my question is, why didn't you just give the right answer the first time? What are you afraid of?
It's not that I'm afraid of anything. I wanted
Oh,
to
it's
be clear with what my position on it was.
It's absolutely that you're afraid, because if you had answered truthfully, you were worried there were going to be consequences to that truth. So you had to spin it. That's fear.
I have my prophecy whenever you want it. It's in Matthew chapter 24, and I'm down in I'll start at 29, where Jesus is saying, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky, the heavenly bodies will be shaken, and then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then all the peoples of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. He goes on and on and on, and then says, truly I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened.
Yes,
That generation passed away.
they certainly did. And all of these things happened.
Really, all the peoples of the earth mourned because they saw the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven. Everyone throughout the entire world.
That is correct. Are you familiar with the writings of Josephus?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, we're familiar with the writings of Josephus. Where's your evidence that everyone in the world mourned when they saw the Son of Man coming in the clouds?
So,
The
during
dishonesty is
destruction
getting
of
like
Jerusalem,
out of hand.
I'm sorry. Where
Josephus,
is your
when he records-
evidence? Where is your evidence that every person in the world mourned when they saw the Son of Man coming in the clouds?
When Josephus records the destruction of Jerusalem, he actually points to this verse specifically, Josephus not being a Christian, and points to the destruction as the fulfillment of what Jesus said.
Cool, he can point to
I'm
it all he
sorry.
wants. That's a stupid
What
thing to
question do
point
you
to.
think I just fucking asked you?
Well, you asked for the evidence.
The evidence for what?
For the fulfillment of this particular prophecy.
No, I didn't.
Which evidence did you ask for?
I asked you, what evidence do you have that every single person cried when they saw the Son of Man coming in the clouds?
I wouldn't say that it was every single person in the world.
Well,
I think that's a very wooden
you little fucking liar, is that Promise read it, you affirmed it, we double checked,
Yes.
we triple checked, and then you decided to answer it with Josephus. Here's a thought. Is it possible that Josephus could have referred to these verses and said they were fulfilled, and Josephus could have been wrong?
I think that it's possible that he could have been wrong, but I don't think that
Cool.
he was wrong.
Well, I don't care what you think. I care what evidence you can present. And you are evidently the king of, let me point to another story because I believe another story confirms my story. You don't have evidence. What you have is one claim to stack on another claim.
Well, I think that the evidence that a person could bring is what history says. Right? If we look at someone like Alexander the Great and we say, well, why do you believe
You
that
keep
Alexander the
disagreeing
Great...
whenever we tell you what the consensus is. You just respond and say, well, I don't agree with them. You haven't offered us even reason to take you seriously because you're literally disagreeing with the experts in their fields on these topics.
May I finish my thought?
No, I have a separate question for you. Where in Josephus's writing does he expressly reference Matthew 24?
I would have to go back to the books of it, but I believe that it's in his 3rd volume.
Because a quick Google search is telling me that Josephus never directly mentions Matthew 24.
Well, I have read Josephus, and
me too.
He does.
I don't remember it.
Well, perhaps on another show, I'll call back and I'll bring the exact reference for it.
And your recollection is that he claimed it was answered prophecy.
That is correct.
And he uses those words?
He does.
Cool. Now, how does that prove that it answered prophecy?
How does Josephus saying that it answered prophecy prove that it answers prophecy?
Yes.
Because the prophecy that was given was specifically between chapter 23, 24, and 25 about how Jerusalem would be destroyed in the year that it was. And when Josephus records all of this, he goes back and he says that Jesus, when he prophesies this, that this is the fulfillment of those prophecies. So the people at the time, as the events were happening, seeing those things happen, attribute Jesus as a prophet, saying that this person had it right.
Okay.
I'm
wondering.
I have it pulled up right now, and I'm looking at where people think that he was talking about Matthew 24 because of a few things he mentions. He most certainly, in everything I'm skimming over right now, and every Google search I'm giving like the benefit of the doubt, like assuming that this must be true, trying to find it. He does not mention anywhere any kind of evidence for the entire globe having experienced witnessing Jesus coming, the Son of Man coming through the clouds, and then mourning.
What does Josephus say?
Well, it depends.
I'm not
Are
going
we
to sit
talking
here and
about
read
the
you
fraudulent
Josephus.
testimonium Flavium or what? Or Flavianum, sorry.
I'm sorry, I missed what you said. You were both talking.
Go ahead, Promise. I'm sorry.
I'm telling you what is not there. I'm not finding anything that's being said specifically about the claim that the entire world would see, all people in the world would see the Son of Man coming through the clouds and they would mourn. That is not addressed, that I'm finding anywhere in Josephus. Like you said, you can call back and tell us where that's addressed. But still, you would think that there would be evidence of the entire globe experiencing something that intense outside of Josephus saying that it did.
Like some other historian saying that this type of a thing happened?
I don't know, man. Some kind of evidence pointing to the entire globe all having this wild encounter of something coming out of the sky and making them all mourn and cry.
What type of evidence would satisfy that requirement? What, just a historical...
I'm sorry, Ethan. You've now reached the level of dishonesty that we've already called out in the other callers. Instead of presenting evidence, you've just asserted, oh, when Josephus says this, that's confirmation that prophecy was fulfilled. No, it's fucking not. And then when Promise asks for evidence, you're like, what evidence would satisfy? That's not what we asked. It's your job to present the evidence that satisfied you and that you think should satisfy others. And then we can assess that and explain why we do or don't agree. One claim on top of another claim on top of another claim, even if they were to confirm, by the way, I gave up massive ground on this just to get to this point, that would not confirm how or why someone's prediction came true. The evidence that we were looking for isn't somebody else said the prophecy came true. It was, how do you know this was in fact a prophecy, divine in origin, and that is the explanation for why a prediction appears to have happened?
So to answer the first part of that question, at this moment in time, I don't have any evidence that I can point to and say, here's some other historical evidence that was written by other people at the contemporary of Josephus. I don't have that available at my fingertips right now.
Then you do not have evidentiary warrant to claim that it was fulfilled prophecy or to claim that Josephus said it was fulfilled prophecy and that makes it fulfilled prophecy.
I think that's incorrect. I gave the evidence.
I know you think it's incorrect. That's why you are accepting things without good reason. I'm not.
To go back real quick, you had asked me what my evidence was, and I had given what my evidence was, and you said that
you did not present evidence. You presented claims. You did not present evidence. You presented claims.
A claim of a historical writing.
A claim of a historical writing that doesn't. What expertise could Josephus have had to confirm fulfilled prophecy? Do historians have that expertise?
He watched it happen.
No. Watching something happen does not in any way confirm that prophecy was fulfilled.
So if a person is familiar with a prophecy that was given by a religious leader of their time, and then a number of years afterwards, a person who is familiar with what was said about a prophecy witnesses that exact thing happening, they would not be capable of, advancing or saying that thing happened.
Well, they would be able to say the thing happened, but not that prophecy was fulfilled. Prophecy being fulfilled means that a prediction was made with foreknowledge, and the event that it predicted occurred according to and consistent with that foreknowledge. How do you prove the foreknowledge?
I would say that the foreknowledge is proven because it was written down.
Okay, so first of all, as we noted, the one you referenced, written down, wasn't written down until after the events by the majority of scholars. But even if it was written down before, as I granted, are you familiar with the logical fallacy called post hoc ergo propter hoc?
I am.
Cool. Are you also familiar that merely making a prediction doesn't mean, even if it comes true, does not mean that you had foreknowledge?
That is correct. Similar to you saying that you would hang up the phone in a minute.
Did I say it in a minute?
You did, but that's all right.
Would you like me to do it now, smartass?
I was using that as the example.
Would you like me to do it now, smartass? From now on, you're going to answer exactly. You're going to answer exactly the question that you're fucking asked and no other question. Would you like me to hang up on you now, smartass?
No.
Okay. The mere fact, even if we granted all of your assumptions, your disregard for scholarly consensus about dating, about authorship, all of that, and even if we concluded that it was all accurately recorded and Jesus said something, I asked you for specificity and you gave me, bro, trust me, some of you all are going to see this. But even if you had given me specificity, that wouldn't confirm foreknowledge, would it?
I would disagree with that. I
Okay,
think that
you would be
specificity-
wrong, and you would be in violation of what you just agreed to. The mere fact that someone states something and it later occurs does not confirm foreknowledge, does it?
Not the mere fact.
Okay, and I just said if we granted the fact that Jesus said this, even though we don't have any reason to, that would not confirm foreknowledge, would it?
It would not with a mere statement.
No. I'm going to mute you because, as I pointed out, you don't get to say shit anymore except to answer the question you were specifically asked. Because your punk ass is not going to make me work this hard to avoid losing my zen and to correct all of your confusion. When you have your own decisions and views about scholarship, about dating, about authorship, and your own epistemology, I'm pointing out that even if I were to bend over backwards, granting absolutely everything that you were advocating for, what we would have is Jesus making a claim before it happened and then it happening. That does not, let's be really clear on this. I want to be really clear, so I'm unmuting and taking the thing off. Does anyone making a claim prior to it happening confirm foreknowledge? Yes or no?
No.
Does me granting, justified or not, that Jesus said something that came true, does that confirm foreknowledge?
Not inherently, no.
You always have to add one more little thing. Congratulations, I'm just going to mute you. Well, no, we'll do this. Does a historian writing decades later about an event that was predicted, does that confirm foreknowledge?
It does not confirm it.
Correct. So when I asked you what evidence you had, and you cited Josephus, you cited something that could not, in fact, affirm foreknowledge, right?
Can I make a distinction?
No. When I asked you for evidence, because we were discussing foreknowledge, the only thing that's relevant to whether or not it is a prophecy, not whether or not somebody said something that came true, but whether or not it was a prophecy. Prophecy implies directly foreknowledge. You presented a case that could not ever confirm foreknowledge, correct?
I would disagree with that.
Then you're an idiot or a liar. One of the two, because you just acknowledged that Josephus could not confirm foreknowledge, and that was the evidence you offered. And when I then linked together the next statement, now all of a sudden you would not concede to that. Go away, Ethan. Go learn to be honest in your defense.
Well, I think that there's a...
No. When I say go away, that means you're done. All right. Who you want to go to next?
Well, we only have 12 minutes, so who do we think is going to be good for that? Maybe.
None of these are Christian, so it's all good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all good in the sense that they're not going to get to that, but you pick.
Wait, but what about John? Or is that a...
It literally says not a Christian.
Oh, yeah, but he can prove a God, so...
Yeah, let's go for it.
That's interesting. Okay, cool. Hey, John, you are live on the Sunday show. We only have about 10 minutes, and then we have to end the show. So I apologize ahead of time that we'll probably have to end the call. Unless you are able to prove a God exists in now getting closer to 9 minutes. So I'll let you have the floor.
Okay, absolutely. So, do you believe that the universe, this physical universe,
Okay,
is the
real quick,
ultimate
just so I
thing?
can make this go
Sorry.
really fast.
Unfucking believable.
There should be no reasons to ask us questions because you have a whole audience and you can't ask them either. And what our answers are have nothing to do with if you can prove a God or not.
Okay,
So
never
I'll let
mind
you
that.
I'll let you start over. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm just
Okay,
going to
cool.
start
Let's go.
with the idea that the universe, the physical universe, is itself the ultimate thing, or if it was not, then well, some people believe that the Big Bang Theory came from a singularity, and if that's the case, then the singularity is the ultimate thing itself. So I'm just.
What do you mean when you say
ask,
ultimate thing? What do you mean by ultimate thing? Do you mean God?
It means like yeah, kind of like it's just like a thing that existed eternally without any like creation thing behind it. It just is. That's what
So
I mean.
you think the universe has eternally existed?
That, yeah, some people believe that, and some people also believe that it came from a singularity that was eternal and self-existent.
No, but what do you believe? Is
What's
this
God?
basically you saying yeah, maybe that's the
singularity.
better question.
I believe in the singularity. So, yeah. Well,
Hang on.
So
no, don't say so. You believe in the singularity in the Big Bang cosmological model.
Yes.
You believe that that's correct.
Yes, sir.
Why the fuck should anyone call that God?
Okay, here's why. So, let's describe its nature. Would you say? Well, I can't ask questions. You said okay. I was gonna. Okay, so,
John.
I'm trying to wait. Okay, so yes,
John.
What,
we
yes, sir.
cannot describe its nature. We cannot investigate,
yes, we can.
even mathematically, prior to the limit of Planck time. Right?
What? I'm sorry. Sorry. One more time.
The Planck time, are you familiar with that? What that is? The Planck length?
Nope. No, I've never heard of that. I'm not a physicist.
Okay, then you should go away and look that up because we're not able mathematically to explore the singularity directly. The singularity is an inference because the math breaks down at a time just after the expansion began. So you can't say anything about the singularity other than that it is a mathematical extrapolation. You can't. Do you think the singularity?
I had some things.
Sorry, what?
Talking. I wasn't.
Oh no, you're finished.
Cut me off.
No, you're finished. Do you think the singularity is?
I wasn't finished talking. I had a whole argument. You just didn't even get. I didn't get into any of it.
Yes, I don't need your argument. It's irrelevant. Do you think the singularity is a thinking agent?
I think it is. I'm not here to prove that. I think it is, though.
What's your justification for thinking that it's a thinking agent?
I'm not here to prove that. I believe that it is. I don't. I can't really prove that.
Do you think you have a good reason for believing it?
Yes, I do.
Do you care about what's true or just what you feel like is true?
I care about what's true.
Okay. Then shouldn't you have a good reason for thinking that something is conscious?
I do have a good reason for thinking that it's.
Then why didn't you give that when we asked?
Because it's nothing that's outwardly demonstrable in a scientific sense. It's not repeatable. And
why on earth would you believe that you have good reason for something if it's not demonstrable? How is it demonstrated to you?
Because I've demonstrated it like through my personal. I only have personal anecdotes to prove it. I can't really prove it in the sense of like I can't prove it in the sense that if Forrest Valkai was here today, he would be demonstrable and repeatable.
John,
and it stands up to a million tests and I don't have.
John, are you just fucking with me?
Yes, sir.
Are you just fucking with me now?
No,
because
I had an argument.
Okay, then answer the question. Then answer the question. What reason do you have to think that the singularity that we cannot explore is conscious?
Because it's something that I've experienced internally. It's something that I couldn't really. That you would not accept. I wasn't going to go that direction. But
John,
Yes, sir.
Why should I not just say fuck off?
Because I had an argument that I wasn't able to get into, but I had something else that I was going to say. That was
what argument would you like to get into for the guy who doesn't know what Planck time or Planck length is and doesn't know that we can't investigate the singularity but wants to talk about its properties? Please enlighten us.
Sure. So the universe itself, would you describe, well, I can't ask questions, so I would describe the universe itself as being self-sufficient. It has everything it needs to create all the galaxies and all the planets and all that stuff, right? So then
I don't know that that's true.
You don't?
I don't know that that's true. No. How do you know that's true?
Because the ultimate, well, I defined it as the ultimate thing, and like it.
If you define something, I'm sorry, John. John, if you define something as the ultimate thing and you defined it as self-sufficient, does that mean it's true? I thought you cared about truth.
But what?
Well, you said you cared about truth, not just what you feel is true. And so you got to listen, John. You said you cared about what's actually true more than what you feel is true. And so when I asked you why you think the universe is self-sufficient, you said, because I defined it as the ultimate thing. Do you think that you defining some, I'm sorry, I'm still fucking talking. You think that you defining something, I'm sorry, I'm still fucking talking. Do you think that you defining something as the ultimate thing or self-sufficient makes it true? Yes or no?
No, but I had something else. Well, I was still going.
Well, then, if you had something else, then why didn't you present the something else when we asked instead of the thing that was irrelevant?
Sir, you started
no, sir, you're lying.
That's why.
I'm going to mute you. I'm not your fucking friend. And I wasn't talking over you. I asked you a question and you presented an irrelevant response. And then you made me fucking tap dance around. I'm still in Zen, by the way, in order to call you out on your stupid, irrelevant response. And then, oh, you ran away. Because I called you out on your irrelevant response. Why didn't you present oh, you had something else. Here, look, I can do both sides of this conversation. You ready, John? Okay, John. Why didn't you present the something else? Oh, because you talked over me and wouldn't let me finish. That's not true. You presented something irrelevant to start with. Yeah, but I was eventually going to get to it. Yes, but we were short on time. We only have a few minutes left in the show. Why would you waste our time with irrelevant things? Oh, because I'm an idiot. You're welcome.
Well, still no evidence for the existence of a God. Another week, another Sunday show, and I don't know. Did you have a favorite call?
Whether anybody thinks I lost my Zen or not, I think I got close enough that I'm going to find a charity that Lindsey Graham hated, and I'm going to donate $50 to that in honor of coming close to losing my Zen today.
I think that's very fair
hey,
view.
Chat.
Nice.
Anybody, any ideas? Because we got a couple minutes left. Oh, promise, you were going to tell us about family interactions.
I can share briefly. I was kind of shocked. Nobody in my family has tried to actually proselytize. I think because I've been so public and they're probably afraid that I'm going to tell them like to call the show or something. So they know my position, you know? And I finally had a distant relative who I have met. Well, it's a cousin. And I have met them a handful of times when I was closer to 10 years old than 35, which is what I am now. They've never spoken to me. They've been my Facebook friend for forever. And they just sent me a message to tell me, first of all, they started off saying, "Hi, I love you. I miss you." What? I don't even know you. And then they go on to say that it makes them so sad to hear the title of my book, Gospel of Lies. And go on this like thing about how I must not know the true gospel, and they're sorry that religion was forced on me, but it certainly wasn't forced on them. And they actually have met Jesus. It was like the most, I think what was shocking to me is I'm used to hearing the same old tired apologetics and rhetoric when I'm working, like when we're doing this. But to have somebody like organically from my own personal life I don't know, I guess you kind of think of them as being more intelligent or being more capable of honest engagement. And to have them start with that was so wild to me. And I told them, I was like, hey, actually, I have a boundary where I don't engage with relatives about religion, especially not over messages. But you can go read my book if you want to find out what I actually mean in there, and you can, go watch any of my content. And they said they didn't want to have to do that. They wanted to talk to me one-on-one, which is like that's when they're trying to proselytize. That's when they want to engage and preach and all of that. But anyways, now I talked enough. But I sent a kind of spicy response now, pointing out that I have experienced tragedy in life and exciting things and marriage and graduation and all kinds of stuff. They've never reached out once. But the title of this book is what got them to reach out, which is incredible.
Hey, we're gonna wrap up. The time's up. You're getting sent over to another show right now. Somebody in chat just said I'm a cranky old queen. Thanks. Thanks for showing your bigotry and giving me a good excuse to be a cranky old queen. I know you want me. I know you want me, but you can't have me. I'm so glad the way I live rent free in their heads. You should see some of the stuff the version of me that lives in their head gets up to. My God, if I had like I don't even have most of those kinks, but I'm gonna go try some new stuff out. Just because of what they say I get up to.
They should start a fanfic club about you. That'd be great. Very entertaining. Thanks, everybody. Thanks.